They won 27 of the things, 10 from the Tories and 17 from the Labour Party. But let's zoom in on London for a second, because ultimately we've seen one gain for the Reform Party right over in the east in Havering. Some people might consider it more Essex than London, but that does paint a picture because a lot of Essex wins for the Reform Party today. Zooming in closer to central London, and you'll see some surprise Conservative successes. The Conservative Party taking back Westminster Council. The Conservative Party likely taking control of Wandsworth Council, although no overall control, Conservatives' largest party, likely being able to do a deal with the one independent former Conservative on that council. And you've got a sea of Lib Dem orange, or gold, they sometimes like to refer to it, the further west you go. But a lot of London's 32 boroughs still to count. I want to take you back to sort of the Greater Manchester area for a moment, something we might call Burnham land, as in Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. You can't see much here because it's sort of a no overall control splodge, so I've taken the liberty of zooming in. Let's walk over to the touchscreen, courtesy here a map of Election Maps UK. And this is that same Manchester area, but we've broken it down by ward. And you can see, instead of black splodges over here in Oldham and Tameside, you can see that sea of Reform turquoise, and then Stockport going overwhelmingly Lib Dem there. If we go over to the west and we look at Chorley, Wigan, Bolton and Salford, just look how much turquoise there is here. This is all Andy Burnham's backyard. What does that tell us, particularly about where people in the northwest are feeling and where they're going? Really interesting, more granular results here of those wards, even though on our big map over here it doesn't show so much as a Reform, because some of these have gone no overall control, and again in many of these councils only a third of the wards, only a third of the councillors were up for election. But as I say, still 90 council areas began counting at 9 this morning. We're going to be getting a trickle and then a flood of more results as this morning goes on.
Good morning, 9:30 on Friday, the 8th of May, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, Britain has rolled the dice and it's fallen on Reform UK as the turquoise tidal wave sweeps the nation, while Labour suffer a brutal battering in the elections so far.
Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas, and what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands.
Starmageddon strikes the Labour Party, but the Prime Minister insists he's going nowhere.
Voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. Labour was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
What could be historic disaster at the polls for Labour, Keir Starmer says he won't walk away and plunge the country into chaos. What does Cabinet make of that?
We know this is hard, there's no point in pretending otherwise, but Kemi set out an agenda which is popular on the doorstep, and we will continue to get that message across to voters, and we know that that will be rewarded at the ballot box in years to come.
Well, the Tories are claiming it's been a mixed night for them. They've lost 158 seats, but they have taken Westminster City Council from Labour.
He's doing a fantastic job. He's led our party to become the largest it has ever been in the party's history. I love working side by side with Ed. We make a strong leadership team, but he is the right person to lead us into the next election.
Well, that was the Deputy Leader of the Lib Dems saying that Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, is going nowhere, but they've gained just 35 seats so far, but they say they're heading for their 8th best set of local election gains in a row.
Meanwhile, Zach Polanski's Green Party are still holding hope of winning seats across the capital city, with many more results still to come in, and this is far from over.
Well, we're painting in the map as the morning rolls on. Yes, we're starting to see a flurry of results come in overnight. Reform picking up at least 2 councils so far. Conservatives surprisingly perhaps strong in London, but a bad picture for Labour. Many, many more results to come.
Well, hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates. And I'm delighted to say we're joined by GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, this is an extraordinary night for Nigel Farage's Reform UK.
It really is. I mean, he has lit a bonfire under the 2 main parties here, and it's erupting with an accelerant really driven by him personally, I think, to a certain degree. No question that he is the real winner. He is saying that this is a historic change. It's the end of left and right politics, he says. He calls it historic. Forget left-right. There's no more left-right, he says. It's out the window. It's finished. Peers like Aisha Hazarika, Labour peer, there's a real chance of Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. He calls it his Beeches Brook at the Grand National, that big, the big offence. He's cleared on the way to that goal. And this party is all about getting Nigel Farage into number 10. And this is about building ground troops who can do that. Lots of Labour cabinet ministers have lost their friends in this, in disaster in places like Wigan, where Lisa Nandy is strong. Tameside, that's been taken by Reform UK. Of course, that's Angela Rayner's seat.
First time since 1979 it's not been held by the Labour. That was the year Margaret Thatcher won the
records are tumbling, and there's pressure now on Keir Starmer. There's a slight pause while the counts start again at 9 a.m. and after the overnight counts, but already pressure on Sir Keir Starmer. He's been saying in the past few moments that he's not going to walk away from this and plunge our country into chaos. He takes the blame. He's convinced that this can and will get better. He'll give a speech on Monday when he'll try and accelerate the pace of change. But is that change what the country wants? Frankly, the country's blown a massive raspberry at the Prime Minister, and his response is to say, I'm going to carry on.
And you talk to Labour MPs, ministers, they've been telling us in the last few weeks, Chris, the problem on the doorstep is him. Starmer.
And apparently, I mean, witnessed and said to him personally by Ed Miliband, the Climate Change Secretary. The article overnight in the Times says he was told this 2 weeks ago, make a timetable to stand down, Prime Minister, for the sake of the party. He was asked about that exact comment moments ago, and the PM said that, frankly, Ed Miliband has made clear he supports me. Didn't deny the conversation. So that conversation has a ring of truth to it now, which wasn't there. He won't say when he'll stand down. The problem in politics, of course, that makes him a lame duck. We saw that with Theresa May. As soon as you say you're leaving, you've gone in politics, so he can't afford to say that. But how can he turn it around, Miriam? I don't know.
I don't know. And one of the things that commentators are saying this morning is that Reform is now a truly national party. In the past, they've suffered from having a surge in polling in some areas and being very weak in others, but they seem to have broken through now. They've got a foothold in large areas of the country, and actually it's now the Conservatives and the Lib Dems that are becoming regional parties in parts of London and the South East. So a huge breakthrough for them.
Certainly England-wide. We don't know about Scotland and Wales, obviously still this afternoon, but the forecast is they're going to do very well. They could, Farage said in his clip in the past hour, that Plaid and Reform are neck and neck to win Wales. It seems likely that even if Reform or Plaid win, that Plaid will form a grouping with other left-wing parties and keep Reform out. And I think, well, I know that...
What an extraordinary result that would be for Labour to no longer control Wales.
First time since 1922.
100 years.
Yes, and on the devolved assembly, first time ever, Luna Morgan, forgive me, the First Minister, she could lose her seat. She only used to win 12% of the vote in Ceredigion, but she may lose that. I mean, that'd be completely embarrassing for her.
Of course, on the one hand, Reform will want to win Wales. Why would you not want to win? But on the other hand, it's not going to be an easy government to hold. Wales has got some major problems in terms of health, in terms of education, big row about these 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and kind of woke influence in education. Do Reform really want control of that government in the 2 or 3 years running up to what could be a very, very important
election? It seems likely, even if they win the popular vote, or most members of the Senate, they'll be kept out by Plaid and by Labour and the Greens getting together, and that actually suits Reform, A, not to have to run those difficult issues and being tested when they're 2 years old. I think the party restarted under Nigel Farage 2 years ago, so let's say it's a 2-year-old party. They don't want that responsibility just yet. That's part of it, and also it helps them to define themselves against the establishment, keeping them out, because this party is all about getting Nigel Farage into number 10.
I'll be intrigued as well to see what happens in Birmingham. It's the biggest local authority in Europe. They've had that shocking bin strike for over a year. The council's teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. There's a big, strong Muslim vote there. Has that gone away from Labour?
Well, quite. The country's second city could go towards Reform, and the capital could well go towards Greens. We're going to get those up. As I said, the counting starts in the capital at 9 a.m. They're counting now. Results at lunchtime. I mean, watch what happens, you know, in Hackney, in Diane Abbott's backyard. Will the Greens take that?
Amazing.
Chris, where do Labour go from here? Because for so long now, they've focused on winning the Muslim vote. They're losing that rapidly to the Greens. They've focused on progressives, graduates. They're moving to the Greens. They've lost sight of their traditional working class vote. They've now moved to Reform. Who exactly is going to vote Labour in future and why? Whereas the Conservatives, for example, obviously lost a lot of support. But they do seem to have this bridgehead in the very wealthy areas of London,
Westminster, Kensington and Chelsea, but they won back Westminster. They've narrowly failed to win Wandsworth by one councillor who's an independent, but that looked like that was nailed on. They are making ground, but they haven't really fought back from their 14 years of failure.
Well, they're not, and they are still very much losing ground.
Yes,
they're still down in percentage terms from last year, down in percentage terms from 2024. It's just that they do still have some stronghold areas, which Labour don't seem to have now.
No, and if it's right, we heard Nigel Farage there talk about what he expects to happen in coming hours. He said repeatedly, Farage did, the best is yet to come. He talked about Cannock, Sunderland, Wakefield. These are Labour red wall seats. By the way, we must talk about the Greens. What is fascinating is traditional Greens appear to be deserting that party, alarmed possibly by Zach Polanski, the leader who attacks the police when they're trying to deal with a terror incident, the leader who's got some questionable issues on his CV about whether he's a spokesman for the British Red Cross. He said a word was wrong, and whether he advised women on their breast size. But they have lost 5 seats to the Lib Dems in Richmond. That is interesting. They haven't taken Oxford. That's interesting. What I'm told by Lib Dem sources that Polanski's brand of politics is going down very badly in suburbs like Richmond. People who voted the environment all the way are now worried about what's happened to their party.
It's interesting because I think, oddly, he's capturing votes on the Labour left.
But losing them in the centre.
Losing them in the centre. Yeah. But he had a torrid 2 weeks, and deservedly so, because I'm afraid, as the Chancellor of the Exchequer has discovered, you embellish your CV at your peril.
Because it's about politics is about trust and how you present yourselves to anyone, even in our work life, is how you present yourself and what you say.
But what he said about the police tactics when they pulled down the alleged knifeman in Golders Green was shameful, frankly.
And the people who have voted Green for environmental reasons, I'm very interested for that reason to see what happens in Norfolk and Suffolk, partly because I live in Suffolk, but because there's been quite a strong Green presence in recent years, partly because of, for example, Sizewell C, the big new nuclear plant, and the cables coming in from the offshore wind farms have caused huge amounts of environmental disruption.
Over the pylons.
Exactly, and so people have voted Greens because they think that the Greens will help stop some of the landscape destroying. But these people are quite small C Conservatives, I'd say. Will they put up with the kind of politics that Polanski is peddling, or will they go back?
Legalising heroin. I mean, all this stuff is completely anathema.
It's urban politics as well, isn't it?
I know, and it's OK. He says we'll teach kids at school how to use hard drugs. You really want you to teach your kids in school? No, I don't think so.
The Lib Dems have had a patchy night. They're up 29. They've held Eastleigh. They won Sutton from the Tories. They lost Hull to Reform. Again, did well in Richmond upon Thames. A classic Lib Dem story, actually, when they just bumble on. They are yet once again observers to a national story and not part of it, frankly.
Because 2 years ago, Ed Davey led them to their best ever result, 72 seats. Yet the question marks now about his leadership, we keep hearing it. Liberal Democrats and being a bit embarrassed now by these
because he
gimmicks and
defines himself
stunts.
against things, not for things.
Yeah.
Against Trump, Farage, Brexit.
Yeah.
What's he want? What's he do?
Big opponent of the King's visit to Washington, which of course turned out to be an extraordinary success for UK PLC and the King.
Yeah.
And I think, Chris, what's so fascinating about our electoral system, at the risk of sounding like Tom Harwood, who's working away in the corner, is that it just shows how misleading first past the post can be, because people are saying, oh, Labour have had this massive fall since 2024, except they haven't really, because they only achieved 33% of the vote in 2024.
At the general election.
It was the same as in 2019 under Jeremy Corbyn. They never had this popular moment. Yes, they have fallen since then, but actually 2024 really masked how much they were already going downhill.
A vote against the Tories.
That's
Yeah,
what
it was a vote against Tories, and even then, they only achieved 33%, which was what Corbyn
It's
achieved.
worth looking at the issue of turnout. We think it's 43%.
Well, that's pretty high for local election.
Well, that's high. So, and that's motivated, we think, by Reform voters, Green voters want to get the main parties out. On Reform, they're at 29%, which is exactly where they were in the Gorton and Denton by-election. That appears to be their ceiling, and that's not enough to win a landslide at the election. They need more like 32%.
And what percentage did you say they're on?
29%.
Yeah.
So they haven't quite got enough to deliver that landslide they want to do in 2029.
All right, well, let's go out to talk to the country now. We're going to talk to Ben Maguire, who is the Liberal Democrat MP for North Cornwall. Mr Maguire, good morning to you.
Morning, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Would you say it's been a patchy or somewhat scratchy night for the Lib Dems? They've only gained a few seats and actually gone backwards in some areas, such as Hull.
No, absolutely not. We've had a fantastic evening so far.
Oh, you haven't.
I suspect
Come on, he's
that
got to say that, Andrew.
even better results are yet to come. When you look at places like Portsmouth, we've taken control of the council there, where many commentators, Andrew, was telling us that Reform would win the council. So that's fantastic to see us take overall control there. Up in the north, we've taken overall control of Stockport. Again, we were being told that there'd be a Reform surge that would scupper us there as well. Parts of London, I think you mentioned earlier, Richmond is now completely Liberal Democrat. We have every single council seat in Richmond, which is a fantastic result. And I see that we've taken 5 Green seats. So instead of Reform, it was the Green being talked up in that part of London.
On that, Mr Maguire, I don't know if you heard our political editor, Christopher Hope, talking about this just now, saying that on the doorstep in some of those now Lib Dem areas, previous Green voters were expressing concern about Zach Polanski and the new direction of the Green Party to much more kind of urban politics, perhaps sectarian politics, extreme left economic politics. Did you pick that up? Do you think that's one of the reasons people have switched to Lib Dems in places like Richmond?
Absolutely, yeah. I was knocking on doors, helping colleagues all around London, and I was picking that message up loud and clear that actually lots of traditional Green voters who supported the Green Party on things like the environment, things like climate change, feel completely abandoned by the leadership that Zach Polanski's shown. He's not talking about the environment at all at the moment. And lots of people were telling me on the doorstep that they like the steady leadership. They like the strong community politics that the Liberal Democrats offer, particularly in local government, rather than this kind of populist brand of politics which divides communities. So that was definitely something that came across loud and clear on the doorstep.
And is Ed, are you happy with the leadership? Ed Davey?
Yeah, absolutely. Ed is the most popular.
You know, there have been mutterings about it. The Economist even reporting at the end of last year he could be the leader most likely to be replaced first. The Economist of all magazines.
Oh, well, if The Economist is saying it, Andrew, it must be true. But no, absolutely not. Ed Davey is the most popular party leader of all the major parties, and we've seen that in poll after poll. He goes down really well on all of the doorsteps that I visited with him, and he's been all around the country knocking on thousands of doors. Very well received, and certainly on the doorstep, his name comes up a lot and is very popular, particularly with his caring background. I think we have lots of carers in this country who really they sort of see Ed's story. It really resonates with them. He cares for his disabled son. He knows what it's like to get up in the morning and look after family members. And he has that personal connection wherever he goes around the country with people. So absolutely not. I think this set of elections, as I say, there's more good news to come for the Liberal Democrats. So keep an eye out as the results come in. But this is looking like a good night for us.
And what is it like in your neck of the woods, Mr Maguire? Are there elections in Cornwall and Devon?
We had our elections last year, so the Liberal
Right.
Democrats made lots of gains. Reform actually made a number of gains as well, but since that election last year, I think about 7 of their councillors have since defected. They've gone independent or they've gone to other parties. And they've told me that, Reform is not fit to govern in Cornwall. They don't focus on communities. They're far too national focused and controlled centrally by Nigel Farage.
Do you think, though, that people were voting on local issues in this election? Because it's interesting that so far the results that we've seen do broadly reflect the national opinion polling, and parties like Reform and the Conservatives have been campaigning on national issues. Do you think people are voting Lib Dem essentially as a protest vote against the bigger, more popular parties, rather than voting for any particular policies that you might have?
Yeah, I think when I was knocking on lots of doors, particularly in London and up in the north, I went to Sunderland as well in the North East. Lots of people there were just telling me what a good job that Liberal Democrat local councillors were doing. They weren't so focused on national issues like Reform voters might be. I know lots of those voters were trying to give the government a kicking and send them a message. But lots of Liberal Democrat voters I spoke to, actually not in traditional Liberal Democrat areas. I mentioned Sunderland. That's definitely not a strong traditional Liberal Democrat area for us. But actually voters there saying, oh, Liberal Democrat councillors are doing a fantastic job. They're filling in potholes, they're fixing pavements, they're getting casework done. So it's really in those areas that we have strong, hard-working local councillors that people really want to vote for us, and they want to see more and more Liberal Democrats, which I think we've seen certainly in Sutton and Richmond and Stockport and Portsmouth and many other councils across the country today.
Looking overall at the results so far, Mr Maguire, it is Reform UK's night. Nigel Farage is storming ahead in all parts of the country, whether it's Redditch, Salford, Exeter. Labour is in retreat, the Conservatives are in retreat. How do you feel about the idea of Nigel Farage being our next Prime Minister?
I feel utterly terrified, disgusted at the thought of Nigel Farage, a man who gets dodgy donations from cryptocurrency billionaires that aren't even located or domiciled in this country. They are a very frightening prospect, and it's clear now after last night's results, it's actually the Liberal Democrats who are left as the main opposition, the main bastion to Reform UK, and the traditional parties, as you rightly say, Andrew, seem to have virtually gone through the trap door. We saw the Conservatives collapse in the 2024 election when I was elected, overturning a huge majority like lots of Lib Dem MPs managed to do. We're now seeing Labour's vote completely collapse, and it's leaving Liberal Democrats fighting against Reform in lots and lots of parts up and down the country.
All right, I just have to say, on that donation, that was money from a man called Christopher Harborne, and that money has been cleared by the Electoral Commission, so I don't think it's right to call it dodgy. But thank you for joining us.
I'm glad you're there to defend him. Thanks, Andy.
Well, I'm just giving you the facts, Mr Maguire. The money came from a man called Christopher Harborne.
I think that was a gift, not a donation. I think that was the key distinguish.
And it has been cleared by the Electoral Commission. So good to talk to you, and perhaps we'll talk to you.
At least it wasn't a Russian bribe like their leader in Wales.
Right, OK. You can see what you think of Reform. We've corrected the record there, Lee. Christopher Harborne is a respectable businessman, and the money came from him, and the Electoral Commission's passed it. Now, that Liberal Democrat said he'd be horrified by the idea of a Nigel Farage Prime Ministership. Looks like he's going to be horrified.
I've never heard of him. Who was it?
He's an elected
He's an MP in Cornwall.
Listen, the electric has spoken over the past 24 hours, haven't they? So
well, I mean, it's looking more and more like Reform will be, at the very least, the largest party.
Well, I think we saw over the past 12 hours or so in the Red Wall specifically, where Boris swept to power in 2019. I was one of those Red Wallers. I was one of about 2, I think, at the last election who managed to retain my seat, because these people in areas like Ashfield have been treated like useful idiots for decades now. They've been treated as voting fodder, and they've had enough. And they're fed up of going to the ballot box, being promised one thing and getting something completely different. We can't be blamed for anything at Reform UK. So people are turning to us in their millions. And, I've been travelling around the country, as has Nigel and Danny and the others, and we get a hero's welcome everywhere we go. It's unbelievable. People literally coming out in the streets, pipping their horns, wanting selfies, wanting autographs. The response is phenomenal, and we're going to deliver. We do get a little bit of criticism with the council from the opposition, but you know what? They need to look inwards. They need to look at themselves. They need to think to themselves, why are people coming out there, millions, to vote for Reform UK? It's because they're failing at local level and they're failing at national level.
What's really interesting, Lee, is that we've already seen over the past few years big swings from Conservative to Reform, and Reform has taken up nearly all of the swing away from the Conservatives so far. What we've seen last night is a massive swing from Labour to Reform, and that makes, as many commentators have said, Reform a truly national party. But it's also going to throw out questions about who is your base, who are you for, what policies are you advocating. Do you think that there will be a challenge to this new electorate, as well as obviously a celebration from?
I would say before the British people, it's astounding, Miriam, and I agree with what you've just said. We're looking at places like Hartlepool. We're looking at places in the northwest, Lisa Nandy's seat, where I think we won 24 out of 25. And then we're going to win in places like Essex, where we've got the shadow cabinet, several members there. So we're not just hoovering up the Tory votes, we're hoovering up the Labour votes as well. So people say Nigel's a divisive character and Reform are divisive. We're actually uniting the country. We're bringing Tory voters and we're bringing Labour voters to us.
If you were Angela Rayner today, you'd be very worried, Lee, because Thameside, which is her patch, there were 15 seats. Reform won the lot.
Yeah.
That's been a Labour stronghold since 1979.
It's no surprise. We've seen it all over the Red Wall in the North West. We're going to see it in the North East later. I think we're going to see it in Wales as well. The birth of the Labour Party, South Wales, I think we're going to make huge gains in that neck of the woods. The working people in this country have had enough. And it's places like Essex, which I bang on about, guys, it's not dissimilar from the Red Wall. They just talk in a different accent. But they're the same sort of people. You know, they're hard-working people who are trying to do the best by the family, and they've been let down now for decades. They've had enough, and they're fighting back.
Now, you said, of course, you've got to deliver. You're going to be possibly in control of quite a number of councils by the time the counting is done. How confident are you about that? And I'm not talking about how good the new local councils are. Obviously, only time will tell that. But we know that about 60% of council spending is completely constrained by central government. Without a change of national government, there's actually a limited amount of improvement that Reform councils
It is difficult to run a council, but already in the past year since we took over councils at the last elections, we've identified savings of over £700 million already, and we're working differently. We're getting the potholes sorted out in places like Nottinghamshire and Lancashire and Derbyshire. We're sorting out the send provision in these areas. We're seeing a lot of wasted money in there. We need to put that money where it's really needed. And the great thing about Reform UK, a lot of our councillors are new councillors. They've never been councillors before. They're going to these councils with a fresh pair of eyes. They're not career politicians, and they're asking difficult questions. And also, they're asking obvious questions to the officers. We're getting a little bit of pushback, obviously, from some of the officers that are set in the ways. It's a bit like the civil service. But we're asking the right questions, and we're getting stuff done. It's going to take a while, but I'm confident that over the next 3 or 4 years, people will see real value for money at their local councils.
Look at this extraordinary result again, Lee, with all these councillors you're going to have. How many members of the House of Lords have you got so far? Have you got just one?
I think it's just one, yeah.
Some of your councillors in the House of Lords.
But I mean, as part of preparations for government, you're going to have members of the House of Lords. When is the Prime Minister going to get off his high horse and agree? Because he's the only one who can agree.
Well, he should do. He should do. It's not very democratic, that blazing. But I was speaking to a Tory lord just 2 weeks ago who had a quiet word in my ear. He says, do not panic. He says, when you do win the next election, there won't be as much pushback in that place as you think.
Well, you say the Lords is undemocratic, but normally they do respect, even if it's eventually the will of the Commons, so you'd hope that would happen. Lee, you've got a big job now in front of you, and obviously if you did go to win the next general election, which is certainly what the polls are suggesting at the moment, there are going to be some very, very tough decisions for a Reform government to make. You've said that people are coming out onto the streets saying, please save us, we desperately need change. But actually the decisions that are going to have to be made to bring that change are going to be tough. We're talking about serious economic reforms. Are you confident that you can hold people's trust and confidence, even despite the difficult decisions?
If I weren't confident, Miriam, I wouldn't be sat here today talking to you guys. I think one of the big things we've got to tackle first is the welfare system, the benefit system. It's completely out of control. It's getting worse under this Labour government. There's these politicians in Parliament, they seem to think that the Red Wall voters in areas like Ashfield are pro-benefit. They're not. They're hard-working people. It's
yet,
in their DNA to get up in the morning and go and do a shift.
Over 50% of households now are net recipients of welfare. So a lot of people that vote for you at the next election are going to see their welfare cut. Are you confident that you can carry on under that kind of pressure?
But a lot of people say to me, we want a proper job, earning proper money, we want more hours, we don't be surviving on universal credits, we don't want our wages topped up, we want a proper job. It's as simple as that.
What about the old criticism they often throw at Nigel? It's a one-man band. Is this proving this point to the contrary?
Well, I think we're going to be a 2,500-man band by the
How many
next
councillors are you going to have by the end of the evening?
I don't know. I'm not going to make any more predictions. I made a prediction yesterday that we'd win 1,500 seats.
Right.
That was my...
I went for 1,600.
You went for 1,600?
Yeah.
It could be more, Andrew, so I'm not making any more predictions. But, you know, it's exciting times. And, you know, what Reform UK have done, they've really got people engaged in politics again. People are excited. You know, people are going out to vote. People that's never voted before. It's a bit like the EU referendum. You know, in Ashfield, it was a 70% turnout. Normally, to general, it's 60%. People are switched on now. They've had enough. They know their vote counts. They're very nimble in which way they vote, and they've got no loyalties now. People haven't loyalty to the family, the country, and the community, and they'll go and vote for a party they think will look after them rather than look after somebody else.
I'm just saying, just briefly, what is the number one issue that you heard on the doorstep?
On the doorstep?
Yeah, what was the number one?
There's two, Andrew.
All right.
There's two. Obviously, it's immigration.
Yeah.
But the second one is potholes. It's as simple as
Really?
that. And I always say that politics is simple. Fix what you can see.
Yeah.
It's the first thing we see every morning when we go out the house is the potholes and the state of our roads. And, you know, and they bleat on us about spending an extra billion and a half on our roads. Meanwhile, we're spending 6 or 7 billion a year on illegal migrants. People are furious in this country.
One group that you have yet to really make inroads in is young people, especially young women. What have you got plans to help win
We've
over
got our
the youth?
policy team working on that right now, Miriam. But what I will say, without giving too much away, we've got to give young women something and families. Personally, I want to see young people be able to afford to buy a house. We need to get a policy in place that gets people on the housing ladder. If you can do that, people will vote for you. It's a bit like Maggie in the council houses in the 80s. I couldn't understand it at the time. We're living in Ashfield, being a coal miner, been in that sort of red wall area, that people were voting Conservative. And the only reason they voted Conservative is because Maggie allowed them to buy the house and allowed them to have a financial stake in society, which was beyond their wildest dreams.
Yeah, it was a vote changer. It really was.
Lee?
You're going to be back with us a bit later, I think, Lee. That's Lee Anderson, the Reform MP for Ashfield. Chris, I hope, just joined us very briefly. Chris, just very briefly, anything to add? Lee, rush heading to the cabinet at this rate.
Yeah, well, it's extraordinary, isn't it? And where you've come in just not even 2 years, Lee Anderson. I mean, are you ready for government? Is a question I think many voters might be asking about you.
Listen, can we make a worse job than this current shower or the one before? And I was there, along with Miriam, over the past 6 years in that place, and I always say I think there's a bunch of clans running the country, Chris. It's time. There's a new sheriff in town. It's time to give us a chance. But you're quite right what you say. You know, 2 years ago I joined Reform UK. There was people on the opposite benches laughing, but they're not laughing now.
Certainly not.
Lee, thank you. More with Chris in a minute. It's going to be an exciting next couple of hours.
Certainly
Plenty more
is.
results to come in.
Yeah, it's Friday, the 8th of May, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Friday, the 8th of May. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Britain rolls the dice on Reform UK as a turquoise tidal wave has swept the nation and is continuing to sweep the nation. Labour has suffered the most brutal battering in decades.
Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas, and what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands.
Well, Starmageddon strikes the Labour Party, but the Prime Minister insists he isn't going anywhere.
Voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. May was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
He's going nowhere, says Sir Keir Starmer, but the country disagree. How will his cabinet react to his stubbornness about his future?
We know this is hard, there's no point in pretending otherwise, but Kemi set out an agenda which is popular on the doorstep and we will continue to get that message across to voters, and we know that that will be rewarded at the ballot box in years to come.
Well, it's been a mixed night for the Tories. Currently, they've lost 171 seats, but they have got one consolation prize. They've captured Westminster City Council from Labour.
He's doing a fantastic job. He's led our party to become the largest it has ever been in the party's history. I love working side by side with Ed. We make a strong leadership team, but he is the right person to lead us into the next election.
And the Lib Dems have gained 35 seats so far. They're celebrating that they are heading for their 8th set of local election gains in a row.
Well, Zach Polansky's Green Party are holding out hopes of winning seats across the capital, with many more results to come in. Meanwhile, county has begun in Wales and Scotland, where there could be major reform breakthroughs. And GB News, of course, will be covering it.
Yes, I'm here in Glasgow, and over this hour we'll have the story of Scotland's biggest city, but also a look at the national picture as Scotland went to the polls to decide whether a quarter century of SNP was on the cards.
I'm in Aberdeen, the northeast of Scotland, a population of about 232,000. That's about 4.2% of the population of Scotland. It is the energy capital of Europe, and that is playing into the ballot boxes: fishing, farming and fuel. And it looks now, in the initial opening of Buckinghamshire, that it is going to turn turquoise, with Reform set to have their first MSP.
Meanwhile, we're looking at those results across England, where 5,000 council seats were up for election. We've already had a trickle of those results in, just over a fifth of them. Many more are being counted. So far, Reform success in Essex, up in the northwest, the northeast, but some surprise Conservative successes in London.
Hello and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates. What a night so far, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still more to come in.
Yeah, and Wales and Scotland are absolutely fascinating. Is the SNP going to get its first overall majority since 2011? That would be an extraordinary result, and shame on Labour if that happens. After all the scandal surrounding Nicola Sturgeon.
Deserved in Scotland. I mean, it seems that the electorate have just shrugged their shoulders and think, we'll just stick with the nationalists. But
because they can't stomach Labour.
But I think they seem like a party run out of ideas, the SNP, frankly, and in need of a break from it, but they can't get it.
And it's the rise of reform in Scotland is a fascinating story as well, because I think people have assumed for a long time that the right-wing parties are pretty much dead. I mean, the Conservatives have had a small presence, but perhaps, I mean, in the past, the Scots have been a fairly small C Conservative bunch, or some of them. Perhaps this is a resurgence of the right.
Well, Alex Salmond built his SNP on quite a right-wing appeal on taxation, didn't he? And that was lost under Nicola Sturgeon. Will we see this left-right idea disappearing as Lee Anderson's leader, Nigel Farage, tells us? No more left or right. That's gone out the window. It's finished. Is that right, though? And we'll see that in Scotland and Wales play out this afternoon. And that's, of course, we'll see Reform can finally say it's a national party too.
Well, let's go to our GB News Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who's standing there in front of his excellent map. Tom, bring us up to date with the results so far.
Well, firstly, I'm going to rewind the clock, because this is the results as they were before last night. Notice all of this red in the northwest, red in the northeast, red splattered across the country, and a lot of red in London. Well, let's jump forward to today. And what you will first notice is, if we jump forward to today, there it is. You'll notice that some of these red splodges are no longer red. Lots of black on this map. Now, I should explain, black on this map isn't a new sort of party that we haven't heard of before. It's no overall control. Now, lots of these councils have actually had only a third of their seats up. Some of them only half of their seats up for election. So take Hartlepool up here in the northeast of England. Reform won every single seat that there was to offer, but only a third of the seats were up. So it goes to no overall control, even though Reform won every single seat. It's a similar sort of picture down in... let's go back 1 second and stay in England while we go down the east coast of the country. I was going to talk about Hull, where Reform picked up 10 seats, and there's Hull, again, a no overall control. And in North East Lincolnshire, Reform won all but one of the seats available there. Again, over in Wigan, all but one of the seats won by Reform. And in Tameside, Wigan's there, Tameside's there, all but one by Reform. So lots of Reform successes, even though that doesn't show up in turquoise on the map. No, the only turquoise spot before we get to London is, of course, Newcastle-under-Lyme, where the Reform Party have taken the council. Somewhere where Reform have underperformed, perhaps, though, is down here on the south coast in Fareham. Now, people might recognise that as the constituency of Suella Braverman. It is Tory blue this morning. The Reform Party only won one seat on the council, which perhaps is a question mark there as to whether if Suella Braverman would keep her seat at the next election or whether it would go remain as a Conservative and she would lose it as a Reform MP. Question marks there. Let's go to London, because London has 32 boroughs, every single councillor in London up for election yesterday. We've started to get these results trickling through, and Reform have been successful in Havering, taking that council from the Conservatives. Of course, this is the site of where Andrew Rossendale, a former Conservative, now Reform MP, has his seat. Nigel Farage was there earlier today. They're very happy about taking Havering, but perhaps a sting in the tail, Bexley remains Conservative. I think there had been some hopes that Reform would take Bexley, and of course they have taken lots of the Essex councils into no overall control. But you come more and more into central London and you start to see more of a Conservative success picture. You see Westminster Council here, Kensington and Chelsea Council here, and Wandsworth Council here. Well, Westminster flipped from going Labour to Conservative. The Conservatives only needed to gain 2 seats. In the end, they gained 7 from the Labour Party and took that council. Kensington and Chelsea remains Conservative. Wandsworth Council, the Conservatives had advanced to become the largest party. They need 1 more seat, however, to take control of the council. There is 1 independent on that council, a former Conservative. Perhaps they will make a deal with him and control that council. I'd say that's highly likely. Some interest here in Richmond upon Thames as well, a Lib Dem stronghold. The Lib Dems have advanced in this area of West London, interestingly, taking 5 seats from the Greens. Now, in the previous election, they did have a deal with the Greens so that they wouldn't stand against each other, but I wonder if this also does show that perhaps the Greens turn towards a more left-wing form of politics, a more Corbyn-adjacent form of politics, has put off some of the leafier, wealthier parts of the country that used to vote Green and have not done yesterday. Well, that is just a flavour of the picture as it comes in. We still have over 90 councils that only started counting at around 9 o'clock this morning. So as the day continues, we're going to get a lot more results from England. Let's skip ahead to Wales now, which we got a sneak preview of earlier. This is the new electoral system for Wales. No longer 60 seats in the Senedd. No, there are now 96 seats in the Senedd, all in equal-sized constituencies elected with a form of proportional representation. We'll start to get these results as the morning and indeed afternoon progresses. And let's finally go to Scotland. Again, no results through from Scotland yet. Once it comes up, here it is. A mixed member proportional system for the psephologist nerds out there. That means there's a whole bunch of constituencies, but also regional lists. Everyone in Scotland gets 2 votes, 1 for their local member, 1 for their list member, party member. And again, no results through from Scotland yet. We're going to start to see those trickle in as the morning progresses. But that is the picture of the country as things stand.
Thank you very much, Tom. Fantastic analysis, as always. Well, let's go over now to our GB News political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who is live outside Downing Street, where the current resident is Keir Starmer. Olivia.
Yes. Indeed. Keir Starmer had his message this morning, which he repeated 4 times. He said he will not be walking away. We've already had some senior cabinet ministers come out to bat for him. They've got a few lines which they're rolling out, one of which is that Labour has a mandate, it won a general election, etc., etc. The other, which they seem to be pushing very hard, is that it's not the time to change leaders in the middle of a war. The third is that they shouldn't be doing the same as the Conservatives and doom scrolling through leaders. Now, I predict, and I may look stupid in a few days' time, but I predict there will be a stay of execution for Keir Starmer over the next week or so. We think here in Downing Street that the Prime Minister has gone up to Chequers and will be holed away there for the weekend. We don't know that for sure. And in the meantime, we have heard from those senior cabinet ministers, David Lammy, John Healey. We've even heard from Lucy Powell, a former critic of the Prime Minister, saying that it's not the time to change Prime Ministers. But, and this is a big but, we predict that about 1,500 Labour councillors across the country are going to lose their seats. That is utterly catastrophic for the Labour Party. That is wipe-out territory. That is really near the bottom end of what we were expecting for Labour. Those 1,500 councillors and everyone around them are going to be really angry with the Prime Minister. And these people really matter. They're the people who go out at elections, knock on doors, who do the dirty work for the Labour Party. Keir Starmer has given a message to them. He's said that he claims responsibility for what happened last night, but I think his bullish tone is going to go down quite badly among those councillors. Those former councillors. They will feel like the Prime Minister isn't taking this seriously enough. And I think that is going to be a big problem for the Prime Minister in the weeks and months ahead. I think the other issue for Keir Starmer is the extent of the Reform victory. Reform are managing to do something that no third party has really ever managed to do before. It is breaking up the electoral map. It's seizing control of areas in that red wall area of the country, which we know is the one that decides elections. The stakes for Labour are really, really high. And I've been speaking to sort of Labour sages over the past few weeks who wisely say that the Labour Party is no good at regicide. When it actually comes to it, they don't get rid of their Prime Ministers. But the truth is, there is no historical precedent for what is happening now. The march of reform is extraordinary, and there will be plenty of Labour former councillors, Labour members, Labour voters, and even Labour MPs who are really worried about that rise of reform. And if they begin to think genuinely that Keir Starmer could allow Nigel Farage into Downing Street, that is when I think we start to see a move against the Prime Minister. One other thing which I think is worth bearing in mind, the unspoken reason that Labour cabinet ministers won't give for keeping Keir Starmer here for now is that Andy Burnham, their preferred choice, the only person who Labour insiders really believe has a hope of stopping Nigel Farage getting into number 10. Andy Burnham doesn't have a seat in Westminster, and given the results in Manchester and near Manchester overnight coming through this morning, it looks as though it would be very difficult for him to get a seat. So I think part of the plan is keep Starmer here for now and get Andy Burnham later on. Let's see how it plays out.
All right, that's Olivia Rutley in Downing Street. We've got Lee Anderson with us. Lee Anderson, who would Reform rather face at the next general election? Andy Burnham as Prime Minister and Labour leader, or Keir Starmer?
We're not really worried, Andy, to be honest. People keep harping on and banging on about Andy Burnham. He wasn't that a greater MP when he was in that place. He wasn't a great Health Secretary, so we fear nobody at the moment. And I will say this about Sir Keir Starmer. I'd like to see him hang on a little bit. I don't think he will, but I'd like to see him hang on. He's our best ever campaign manager. He's got the Corbyn effect. You know, the Corbyn effect in 2019. In places like in Ashfield in the Red Wall, people hated that man, and it was a Brexit, it was an anti-Corbyn, and it was a Boris vote. And I think Starmer's having the same effect. Some people say it's Marmite Starmer. I think everybody dislikes him.
Yeah, and I also think this idea of giving the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds will backfire horribly. 16 and 17-year-olds aren't going to vote for some bloke called Sir Keir.
Green.
You know what?
Green or
Nigel, and even myself sometimes, we get mobbed by young lads, 15 and 16-year-olds. They want selfies, they want supporters, they love
There could be a potential danger, though, if Starmer were to go, and in the unlikely event that Labour were to tack back more towards their founding values, kind of small C conservative, supporting workers, I mean, that could potentially be a threat to reform. On the other hand, if they went left, then that could potentially benefit you even more.
I don't know which way they're going to turn, Miriam, to be honest, because they're getting it on the left.
Inwards, on themselves.
Yeah, probably. I think...
there'll be a messy reshuffle.
I think over the next few weeks he's going to start sacking people.
Yeah, he will.
And the one person that does need sacking really is him, but he's going to start blaming anybody but himself.
It'll be the Chancellor, won't it? Chris Hope, will it be the Chancellor that's Czech who goes first in the reshuffle?
Well, interesting that John Healey wouldn't say twice whether she was safe in the interview with GBNews earlier today.
That's the Defence Secretary, yeah.
The Defence Secretary.
Yeah, she has to go because a lot of it went wrong.
It hasn't gone very well for her, and but the problem is you lose a Chancellor, you're not long for this world as Prime Minister. Leanne, a quick one to you. Peter Kellner, the pollster, has put an interesting Substack out moments ago, which is getting Westminster talking. He's saying pretty clearly he thinks that you're going backwards. You won 41% of the seats last year, only a third scheduled this year. Have you topped out? You're polling at 29% in these forecast polls now, the same as you had in Gorton and Denton. That's not enough to win the landslide you want to win. Yeah. You're not doing enough to win the election, are you?
I
I
remember certain Christopher Hope saying this time last year that Reform UK was a political sugar rush. Well, it's a long sugar rush, Chopper, that is, because we're going to win over 1,500 seats today. I think we're averaging about 29% in the polls as well. I think the results...
That's the same as Gorton Denton. It's not enough for that landslide you need, is it?
Listen, we're on the up. We're a new party. You know, just 2 years ago, we had one Member of Parliament, and that was me, and we had just a few councillors. By the end of this weekend, we're going to have over 2,500 councillors, and we've got 8 MPs now. We've got 275,000 members. We're going that way, Chopper. And that Westminster story you talk about is a Westminster story only. People in the real world are showing you what they really think out there.
Peter Kellner knows what he's talking about.
Well, so do I.
I mean, none of us can predict the future and what will happen to the polls. But, Lee, there are kind of two interpretations around. One is that, as Nigel Farage has said, this is the end of two-party politics, the end of left-right politics. Or you've got the Danny Kruger hypothesis, which is that every so often, every century or so, the party of the right evolves, and we're currently in that transition from the Conservatives being the party on the right to Reform.
Yeah, I don't think you can go back 100 years, but what I will say, we live in different times now. People, 100 years ago wouldn't even recognise their MP in the street. They wouldn't even probably know who it was. But nowadays...
We have wall-to-wall Instagram, though.
Well, we did, and you'd probably get kicked out of your house if you didn't vote for a certain squire or something like that.
You have to go back a long time for that.
These days,
MPs
should be more accountable. They're more recognisable. People follow politics on the phone. Politics nowadays, Miriam, is like a soap opera. People want it instantly on the phone. Yeah. And this is why GBNews is doing so well, is because people are loving politics and the drama being played out.
Do you know, that's a really good point, because actually, when we have really, really exciting British political news, that's when we get our biggest viewing figures, isn't it?
Absolutely right. We're going to go to Wales now, because I suspect there's going to be a seismic shift in Wales. The 120 years of Labour domination could be well coming to an end. Our chief political correspondent is there, Catherine Forster. Catherine, they're counting the votes. I hadn't spoken to a Labour MP who thinks they've got a cat-in-hell's chance of hanging on in there.
No, welcome to Wales, and a huge political earthquake unfolding in this country today, because Labour, as you said, has ruled Wales for 100 years, and since the devolved government, the Senedd, created in 1999, also ruled the devolved government. Labour sources are openly admitting they are going to lose the Senedd today. They expect to be doing very, very badly indeed. And the likely winners, well, it's going to be a tussle between the Nationalist Party, Plaid Cymru, and
at the moment, so we'll have to come back to
recent...
Catherine, I think, once that the microphone problem is sorted out. But the Wales example, Andrew, is going to be absolutely fascinating. The idea that Labour will no longer be the most popular party.
Extraordinary, extraordinary. And they're paying the price of having run that country badly for 20 years. People coming into England to use the English NHS because they've made such a mess of the Welsh NHS. The education's been a disaster. And I think Leanne would agree, Labour have taken the vote for granted in Wales.
I mean, South Wales is the birth of the Labour Party. It is. I mean, there'll be some of the founders at Keir Hardie will be turning in his grave watching this now. They've used, I've said it before, Andrew, they've used the traditional Labour heartlands, the miners, the steelworkers, you know, the grafters. They've used them as useful idiots, and now they're fighting back. They've had enough. They want something completely different.
Is it a seat? Do you want to win in Wales? Because senior figures tell me...
What a ridiculous question.
Well, no,
what a ridiculous question.
I'm only quoting back at you what your colleagues tell me in your party.
Who
they
said
say...
That? Who said that, Chopper?
It was said to me on lobby terms.
On lobby terms. I know what lobby
I'm not sure you want to win because you want to define yourself. You'll be kept out probably by a Plaid Green Labour coalition of interests. You might be second or first to Plaid. That suits you not to be in charge.
We want to win in every single seat we...
And run a nation, Lee Anderson.
Of course we do. I wouldn't be here, Chopper. None of us would be here if we didn't want to...
Are you ready? Is your party ready for this now? Now?
Has Labour been running Wales well over the past 25 years?
Arguable.
Arguable.
Well, look at
Andrew thinks not.
No,
I think
no. Well, not in terms of the NHS.
They need a change. They need a change.
Yeah.
They need reform UK.
At some point, of course, in the electoral process, the opposition MPs are brought into the civil service to see how to operate the levers of power.
Yeah.
That's going to be coming soon. You're going to be demanding that soon, aren't you?
Well, I would imagine so. I mean, the civil service. Let's not forget, Andrew. There are some good people within the civil service. There are a lot of good people, but we know. I know through my time on the Home Affairs Select Committee, there's some people there won't pay them in washers. To be honest, they're absolutely useless. And they will push back, and we've had weak politicians in Parliament. We see it in councils as well with officers where they're pushing back, they want to push forward their own agenda. We need strong-willed politicians to push back at these civil servants.
And is the plan still reform will bring in people from outside?
Yeah.
To sit in Whitehall.
I mean, what a revolutionary idea to find people that actually know what they're talking about to run departments. I mean, who would argue with that?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Because that's been we haven't named any of them yet, but will that be near the election?
Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah.
Did you know that GBNews is not allowed to be played in the Senate?
That's true.
That's true, yeah.
It's true. So if you win in Wales, will you change that, please?
I think we probably will. I think we probably will. I think we've got a bigger fish to fry at the moment.
And we did try to get a Plaid representative to come onto this program.
I don't know how they do it.
And they said
because
no.
I've been to South Wales many times on the campaign trail, and they love GBNews in South Wales.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, and there are still Labour MPs and Labour cabinet ministers. Let's remember Yvette Cooper.
Yes, Ed Miliband.
They won't come on.
Yeah. David Lammy.
Look at these results in the Red Wall. They could be.
They've got to talk to these voters, like you do. Talk to the voters, Leanne.
Why don't they talk to GB News?
And they're the frit, aren't they? There's this. I've asked many Labour MPs in the lobbies to come on GB News, and they just say, "Oh, they're a far-right channel." No, they're not.
Well, maybe they suspect that viewers are not voting Labour, and therefore they're taking a big risk by coming on the channel. And I'm not defending them. I'm saying maybe this is their thought process, that if most of our viewers aren't going to vote Labour, what's the point of them coming on?
But a lot of people that watch this channel used to be Labour voters.
Yeah, they did. And at the last election, I think the polling showed that the majority of the biggest party for support amongst GB News viewers was Labour. But nevertheless, that's probably changed now.
Well, they need to come back on and try and win those voters back. That's how you win elections.
I agree. I'm not defending them. I'm saying I wonder if that is their thought process.
Well, we'll see. They are a little bit cowardly. But you know what? I do feel for some of the candidates who've been knocking doors, Tory and Labour, that's been knocking doors during these council elections. They must have had a torrid time on the doorstep.
Lee, let's just go back to that polling question that Chris Hope raised about whether or not reform have peaked. Now, of course, nobody knows that. We can't look into the future. But it is interesting, isn't it, that actually we're seeing these big gains for reform and prediction of you winning the next general election, even though you're only hovering around 30% of the vote. Now, in the past, you know, the government that we were part of, and certainly parliaments before, once a party started to fall below 40%, they got worried. And Boris won with 43% of the vote, Thatcher won with 44, 45% of the vote. Even though reform is leading in the polls, it's still a far more fragmented picture than it ever has been in the past.
The period you're talking about, Miriam, is a period when we just had two main parties.
But that's been the case since the war.
We've got five parties now, and you can win a general on 30%.
Yeah, but that's true. That's a mathematical truth. But what I'm saying is, what does that mean for the country? What does that mean for national unity? What does that mean for people coming together politically when we are so fragmented?
Well, we talk about unity, and I said it earlier, that we're winning in the Red Wall, we're winning in Tory areas of well. So actually, we're not a divisive party. We're bringing people together. And I think nearer to the general election, people will make their mind up. What do they want? Do they want to reform UK government led by Nigel Farage, or do they want some sort of coalition with the Mad Greens and the Labour Party? I think the Tories are toast.
Well, I was just about to say, you know, but if you were the largest party, then they were all speculating here. Would you do a coalition deal with the Tories to stop a coalition of Labour, Liberals and the Greens?
I think it's too early to talk about that, Andrew. You don't want to pin me down on that one. I think we're going to win. We're going to win with a huge majority. And I look at the Tory party, the current Tory party at the moment. It's full of wet Liberals. There's about 120 of them, 30 probably proper Conservatives,
Jeremy Hunt.
30 wets, and then there's 30 who don't know what they are. So I don't be dealing with people like that.
Let's just take a pause there because we do have some news coming in. The Conservatives have lost control of Hampshire County Council, which has now gone to no overall control. We've still got Lee with us, and we've also got in the studio former Labour official Halima Khan. Halima, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll come to the Hampshire result in a minute, but...
Well, can we give you commiserations?
I mean, I'm quite happy that Labour are losing their seats, to be honest.
Are you really? Oh.
Yeah, I'm not
We thought you were coming here to bang the drum for the Labour Party.
I think that's impossible to defend the Labour Party. Yeah.
Now, you worked for the Labour Party?
Yes, I did.
So how many years were you working for the Labour Party?
So I worked there from 2019 to 2022.
Right.
So I definitely saw the transition from Corbyn to Starmer, and then the failures of Starmer firsthand at the very beginning of his leadership. I think, you know, the results are showing Keir Starmer's arrogance, which we knew as party staff as well. I think that, you know, the results should push any decent leader into considering resignation, but Keir Starmer's not that kind of a person, I feel like.
When you saw him close up, what was... I mean, we can see publicly what's wrong with him. He can't string a sentence together. He's a bad public speaker, no charisma. But what was he like behind the scenes?
The same, really. You know, he wouldn't want to be held accountable by his own staff members. We had a lot of staffing issues as well within the Labour Party. There was a lot of scandals towards the end of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, at the beginning of Keir Starmer's leadership. And, you know, when staff members would call for meetings to talk about staffing issues, this is while he was leader of the opposition, he wasn't willing to communicate with us. So if he wasn't confident to communicate with his own staff, I was very concerned how he would be leading the working class of Britain if he couldn't lead his own workers.
Clearly you're not a fan of Keir Starmer or the leadership, but the crisis in Labour's falling popularity is not only about Starmer's leadership. I mean, no Labour Party leader has been above 33% in the polls since, gosh, we must be going back to the Blair-Brown era, whereas they used to be regularly well over 40. We're talking about the previous two-party system. So it's clearly not just about Starmer's leadership. Where has Labour gone wrong? Who are the people they are supposed to be representing, and why aren't those people voting for them
I think Labour, for a very long time, since the Blair-Brown era, has been struggling to recruit a sophisticated and stable voter base anyways. It's quite difficult when you look at the Labour Party in the last 15 years, what they actually stand for, because they flip-flop, including Keir Starmer himself. We've seen how many times he's U-turned in or had a great reset within his premiership. So I think, you know, especially door knocking in this local election, it was quite clear that voters don't know what Labour stands for, what they represent, who they represent. I think that Keir Starmer's not clear on his policies. I think a lot of working class people who did vote in the general elections are bitterly betrayed. And I think that what people are looking for, I mean, I'm sorry, I know you're a power of reform, but I think a lot of people are looking for a protest vote, and they have, because they see reform away from the two-party system.
I predict one of the things he'll do to try and prop up his premiership and to save his leadership is move much more towards Brussels. He'll try and do as much as he can to water down Brexit. Would you agree with him doing that?
I'm not too sure about that. I mean, I can't tell what his position will be next. I think, you know, this morning there was a report that Ed Miliband had spoken to Keir Starmer to get him to think about plans for resignation. I think there is a lot of internal turmoil in the Labour Party. Just last week, he whipped his own MPs into voting a certain way. So I think that there is going to be a lot of political chaos within the Labour Party, whether or not we hear that as a general public or things will trickle out. As we have seen recently, there have been a lot of briefings from inside Number 10.
So would you, as a Labour Party member and former worker, would you want to see him replaced and quickly? And if so, by whom?
I think that's the struggle that the Labour Party are having, and I think that's what people around Starmer know, is that there isn't a viable replacement for Keir Starmer either. There isn't a better option. I know there's talks about Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting, but I don't think
She's a tax dodger.
Well...
Oh, Andrew!
She's a tax dodger. She didn't pay £40,000 stamp duty on a second home in... and she lost her job over it. And the Prime Minister's advisor on ministerial standards, Laurie Magnus, said her conduct fell below what was expected of a minister.
And if it's found to be an accident and she's repaid it and...
Well, then the Prime Minister's ethics advisor would have to revisit it.
The problem is, though, goes back to what you said a few minutes ago, which is that Labour needs a sophisticated voter base. But my question is, what do you mean by sophisticated? Because one of the downfalls of the Labour Party is that they have shifted from standing for working people in what Nigel Farage calls alarm clock Britain to appealing to progressive urban graduates who are now deserting them for the Greens. But if Starmer were to step down, it looks like a more progressive, more left-wing candidate might take over, which would exacerbate the problem.
I mean, I don't agree with that, actually, to be honest, because I think the first thing that Keir Starmer did when he became leader was kick out everybody on the left, and he did publicly say, if you don't like the changes, you can leave. So he did isolate the people already when he became leader, which caused a lot of people to move over to the Greens. And then we see Shabana Mahmood with her current policies that is trying to appeal to a right-wing voter base. So it's unfortunate that's not really predictable who's going to come in as leadership. There is, I mean, like I said, there are talks about Wes Streeting, but he's obviously been linked with Mandelson as well. There's photos of him following him around.
He's only got a majority of 500.
Exactly that, yeah.
So that would be very perilous.
So who is Labour's base now, in terms of voters?
I think the people that have continued to vote Labour have been doing so in fear of reform coming in. And I think that's the only policy that the Labour Party have had. And when you see their MPs coming out to campaign for Labour, all they're saying is we need to stop reform. So I think their voter base are just people that don't want reform, and they're begrudgingly voting Labour.
So do you think then that Morgan McSweeney was right, which is that actually Labour should have been looking at reform as the greatest threat rather than worrying about Greens and tacking left?
I mean, I think that they have been aware. They have been aware for a long time that reform is a threat that's coming, especially with the Red Wall. Now we're seeing reports coming in that actually the Labour votes that went to Tories are going to reform as well. So I think they have been aware for a long time. I think that Morgan McSweeney, one thing that was very interesting about something he mentioned when he said Keir Starmer's not the one running the show, and that was something that Number 10 staff was also briefed. So I'd like to know who is, and I think that would give a lot more clarity to the Labour Party voters, who is actually running the show.
Who do you think it is?
I have no idea. Could not tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, hopefully not the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy. That would be terrifying.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Don't think so.
If you were a betting person, what's your hunch is going to happen? I mean, it seems there's no immediate threat to the Prime Minister. Can he get through the party conference season?
Unfortunately, I think he will. I think he will. I think the Labour Party and parliamentary members are very terrified of Starmer. As I said, they're willing to, abstain voting because Keir Starmer whipped them into it. So they are very scared of losing their whip. And I think because of that, there's no appetite to rebel against Starmer, especially within their own constituency when there is such a risk, as the local elections will show, for them to lose their seats.
Andy Burnham is being touted as possibly the next Prime Minister, possibly the best hope for Labour. He doesn't have a seat. Is there any seat now in the Manchester area, or frankly anywhere, that would be safe enough for Andy Burnham to risk standing in a by-election?
Again, I can't tell until we see the results of the local elections. It's going to be very difficult to tell what the situation in Manchester is like. I think there are a lot of angry voters in Manchester.
I'll give one result. You may not be up to speed with Tameside, which has been Labour since 1979. There were 15 seats up for grabs. Reform won all of them from Labour. Angela Rayner is the local MP.
Okay.
So that's making me think her position is looking in great peril too. And Wigan, Lisa Nandy territory, 22 seats were up, all went to Reform. So that's not looking. So that's the red wall disintegrating.
Yeah. Can we bring Lee Anderson back in? Because Lee, of course, you used to be a member of the Labour Party. In fact, you were an office manager for a Labour MP. You've been on the same journey as much of the electorate, trying to be as objective as you possibly can. What do you think Labour should genuinely try to do now?
Well, the backbenchers had the chance 2 weeks ago to get rid of him, and they chickened out. So, I mean, the buck stops with them, I think. But they will be getting a lot of pressure, I would imagine, now, put on them by their associations. There'll be members saying he's got to go. There'll be some members saying he's got to stay. But, you know, the MPs are a selfish bunch, as you know. They want to keep the jobs, and they'll be up for reselection over the next 18 months for their seats. And I think, you know, the ones that do get reselected, they're going to lose anyway. So, you know, I think they must take a gamble. They've got to get rid of him. And I predicted the day after the general in 2024 that Starmer wouldn't last a full term. I thought Angela Rayner would have the knives out for him. She can't possibly stand now until she clears her name. But I think Labour will announce a new leader at the conference in September. I think he's got to go. He's toxic. He's the most divisive politician. He's the most hated Prime Minister in living memory.
It is quite extraordinary in 2 years, isn't it? When you think
in less than 2 years, Andrew, he's gone from winning a landslide to basically sacking 1,500 of his councillors over the next 24 hours. It's incredible.
But policy-wise, so you think they should change leaders? That's what Labour MPs should be looking to do. But policy-wise, what should they be pushing for? Because it seems like they're running around like headless chickens. On the one hand, their traditional base, workers, trade unionists, people like you yourself would have identified with, are deserting them to Reform. But then on their soft left flank, progressives are deserting them for Green.
The problem the Labour Party's got, they're perceived, and they are a party, they're pro-benefit. They don't look after the working people in this country, and people in areas in the Red Wall don't see them as a patriotic party. You know, the traditional Labour voters in the Red Wall are fiercely patriotic. You know, they love king and country. They fly the flag, and when some of these Labour voters put the Union flag up or the St George's flag and they get sneered at by Labour politicians, they hate it. They absolutely hate it.
And is defence spending a big issue, Lee, in your view?
Of course, in my area is a big draw for the armed forces, for the Mercian Regiment, which used to be the Sherwood Foresters, and I get veterans contact me now. I've got serving servicemen contact me through family. We've got one particular friend, his son's in the Royal Navy, and he says, Dad, we are not ready. If there was a war to break out there, we would be toast. And we used to be a fighting nation, an island nation that defended our borders. And, you know, we had a great empire at one time. We went all around the world. And the problem the Labour Party has got when we talk about stuff like this, about our empire, our history, our heritage, our culture, they keep apologising for it. I'm quite proud of it, to be honest with you. I'm quite proud of the things we've done around the world, but the Labour Party are not.
Helene, let's go back to what Labour could do. We've got a King's Speech next week, Wednesday. What could they do, do you think, that could perhaps turn this round? What is the big policy announcement you'd hope that they might do?
Again, I'm not too sure because they were trying to cancel these local elections as well. So I think the ship has really sunk for the Labour Party. I don't think there's very much they can do.
You think that's a strong word, it's sunk and sinking fast?
Yeah, very fast and rapidly declining. I don't think, you know, there is much that they can do. They've disenfranchised the elderly. They've disenfranchised the young. They've disenfranchised anyone with a political opinion, left or right. So I'm really struggling to see how they can come back for it, again, because of how many times Keir Starmer's flip-flopped.
Well, Halima Khan, thank you so much for joining us
really
this morning. Well, we've now got the Green Party candidate for Barking, Paul Powsland. He's popped out of the count, which is still ongoing in Barking, to join us now. Paul, I know you're not allowed to reveal any details about what's happening actually inside the count, but how is this evening and through the night shaping up for the Green Party?
Well, actually, I haven't even been able to get into the count yet because you may be able to see behind me. There's actually a massive scrum to get into the count, which in itself is really interesting because Barking and Dagenham is the kind of Labour stronghold where traditionally they just weigh the vote. There's been no non-Labour councillors elected for 15 years here. The last non-Labour councillors elected, I think, were the BNP back in 2010. And Labour has been in power in Barking and Dagenham for 60 years. There has been no opposition, and normally just nobody even bothers to go to the count because they know what the result is going to be. And that's going to be very different today. It's very exciting. There's a lot of excitement in the air here, and candidates from all across the political spectrum are now scrumming to get into the leisure centre behind me because we really don't know what's going to happen here. The key story is that in Barking and Dagenham, what we're seeing throughout the country, i.e. Reform taking votes from the right of Labour and the Greens taking votes from the left, is a microcosm of what's happening here in Barking and Dagenham. So in Dagenham, Reform have been really challenging Labour and are almost certainly going to take councillor seats there. And in Barking, the Greens have been running them very close from the left. And we don't know really what's going to happen in terms of what the composition of the council is going to be. But what we do know is that things are never going to be the same again here. The idea that you can put a monkey in a red rosette, stick them up in Barking and Dagenham, and they'll get elected by weighing the vote is no longer true. And to be honest, I think that's good for governance. It shouldn't be the case that there is no opposition on the council, and I think it's profoundly unhealthy for democracy if people can just get elected without doing any work for it.
All right, Paul, we're going to come back to you later because we're just going to cross now to the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, who's reacting to some of those local election results.
Thank you for everything that you did. Thank you, and I want you to know that we're going to be moving forward because we are the only serious alternative to Labour. The Labour Party is getting kicked out. People do not like the offer that they have. People voted for change and they got change for the worse with Labour. But we have to show that we are the only party that has a strong, united team. We are the only party that actually has a plan to get Britain working. We are the only party who does any work. We're the only ones who do any work. Reform, talk, a good game, but actually all the places that voted for reform last time are kicking reform out. People who experience reform don't like it, and we know that that's going to happen again this year, but we need people to know that hope is coming. The Conservatives have to come back because, my goodness, this country needs us. We are coming back to fight for our high streets. We are coming back to fight for hard-working people. We are coming back to fight for businesses. We are coming back to fight for veterans, for parents, for farmers. We're coming back to stamp out anti-Semitic hatred on our streets. We are coming back to deliver a stronger economy. We're coming back to deliver a stronger country. And we are coming back to get Britain working again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's Kemi Badenoch. She's in Westminster, of course, because that is the prize, a big prize for the Tories. They've recaptured Westminster from Labour. It was always the flagship borough of the Tories in the 80s and 90s, and they came within a whisker of capturing Wandsworth too. Krista Hope's there. She's talking like she's the winner, but the Tories have had a pretty indifferent night, Krista. I'm just looking at the latest. So far, they're down 171 councillors, and that's before we get into Birmingham, Scotland and Wales.
We've counted so far 1,200, my colleague Tom Harwood tells me, of the 5,500 English results expected. We haven't even got any towards the Celtic nations.
Where Wales is expected to do badly.
Yes, and in Scotland they may disappear nearly altogether. So we're looking at a difficult day for them. This time last year, Kemi Badenoch went to Peterborough, where that was a single metro mayor they won, no council. So they're making some progress. They've won a big council. Westminster, of course, was historically theirs anyway in the past. They narrowly, but for one councillor, didn't win Wandsworth. So it hasn't gone entirely as well as they might expect. But yeah, it's slow, a slow turnaround. She would say, Kemi Badenoch, were she here, that normally you have 2 terms out of government, not just 1 term. So she's trying to turn around a tanker like a speedboat.
But she's she's the leader of the official opposition, and the official opposition, 2 years after the last general election, is still going backwards, not forwards.
And losing MPs.
Losing MPs and losing councillors, and you can't keep losing councillors at this rate.
I mean, on any level, she's failing. She's losing MPs, she's below the waterline on polling, and now she's also shedding councillors.
And they haven't even looked like they're going to win a by-election.
No, they're not in the game, but she's trying to reset it. I think her personal stakes are doing well. She's well regarded in Westminster. She polls very well, but I think corporately the party is still, well, frankly, no one's listening to them.
Well, I think they're still halfway through a 5-year punishment beating. And I think the punishment beating is because they were so woeful in the last few years in government, whether it was the Boris confusion over Partygate and Rishi Sunak's, frankly, odd 2 years as Tory Prime Minister.
But the difference this time is that there's somewhere else for those voters to go. And you could say after 1997 that there was a similar period of deep unpopularity and people not being willing to consider the Conservative Party, but those votes just went latent. They didn't go anywhere else, whereas now they have.
They stayed at home.
They stayed at home, but now they've gone to reform. A lot of members have gone to reform, a lot of councillors have gone to reform, and as the Tories shed more and more councillors, their activist base and their donor base is also going to shrink, which makes you wonder, how can they...
It's a shrivelling party, and that's, of course, what Nigel Farage is talking about. And in fact, in this seat, Danny Kruger, who's the policy chief at Reform, he was saying there should be a replacement of the Tories by Reform UK. So he wants that to be the new party of the right. But that works against what Nigel Farage says about this left-wing division as being broken.
But of course, the Tory part, the Reform Party, what has it got? 20 former Tory MPs in its ranks now? 20, maybe 22?
Yes, including the ones that are no longer MPs.
Yeah.
Well, while I've been on air, I've been receiving texts from people around Kemi Badenoch. Now, they say to me their projected national vote is ahead of where it was last year. So it's not true to say no progress.
So what was their share of the vote last time?
I'll get those figures for you. But it was very early days. We're a fifth of the way into a very big day.
Yeah, and it's going to be small progress.
Well, according to Luke Trill, the pollster from More in Common this morning, this is a couple of hours ago now on X, he was saying that Reform are outperforming their national poll, as are the Tories, by a few points, 4 or 5 points. Labour are pretty much on course for the national poll, and Lib Dems are actually underperforming at the moment. But of course, this is when only a few councils and councillors
we're only a fifth
have been announced.
Yeah, it's very dangerous even to predict anything. And they say that if you look at what they have done, they have won in Westminster, they've got no overall control in Wandsworth and held off Reform in Bexley. So it is, these are limited gains.
And they've lost places like Hampshire, which you would have thought would have been Tory forever.
No question, exactly, and that's concerning for them. But they're and Harlow too. So
what do we think politically next week? Are we going to have a major reshuffle? Because it doesn't seem to me there's any prospect of a challenge anytime soon to the Starmer.
That seems to have gone away.
I've always been of view it's going to be party conference time.
Oh, yes, but that's why Ed Miliband's suggestion of a timetable seems to have currency. The PM was asked about that directly in the interview this morning, and he said, Ed Miliband has made clear he supports me. He didn't deny the fact there was a call for him to set out some form of timetable. A timetable serves the Burnham supporters because he can't win a by-election and become PM straight away. He needs time to become that PM.
And it suits Rayner to get her tax affairs sorted.
Exactly right. It doesn't suit Wes Streeting. So if you want all eyes anywhere is on someone like Wes Streeting. Will he do something this weekend? Will we see resignations even at junior level? We were back in the day with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown back in the noughties. Within that kind of space again, Andrew and Miriam, I think, when everyone's looking at someone else to take the lead, frankly, and no one is.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to replace the Prime Minister, and I just don't think Wes Streeting would have the numbers for the party in the country. I think he's seen as too centrist and too right-wing.
May lose his seat to the independents
because he's only got a majority of 500. He's rather close to Peter Manson. There's all sorts of emails linking him and Peter Manson.
But he's a great communicator, and he wins the crowd round.
Yeah.
He got a lot of support. When he was under fire over a leadership push didn't happen a few months ago, he came out fighting with some amazing connection with voters.
But has he transformed the health service in 2 years? No.
Well, I think numbers are coming down.
Oh, I don't think
waiting times coming down.
I don't think it feels like that, though.
So many of our problems are so deep-seated now. that even a brand new government with a massive majority is going to struggle.
Could reform solve them, Miriam?
Well,
I'm not sure.
Could they solve them quick enough before people leave?
The trouble was, this brand new government with a large majority is led by a Prime Minister with no vision whatsoever. That's the problem.
Well, let's get the picture now in Scotland, because the 2026 Scottish Parliament elections are going to elect 129 members to that Parliament in Holyrood. It's the 7th general election in Scotland since the devolved Parliament was established in 1999.
GBNews Scotland reporter Tony Maguire joins us live from Glasgow. Tony, tell us more. Morning.
Good morning, good morning. Yes, so Scotland goes to the polls once again. 129 MSPs will be voted in over the next 12 hours. We're going to see 73 constituencies across Scotland, and of course the 8 regions, each returning 7 MSPs. And obviously there's been many a tale of during this election campaign. But as the day got underway today, well, there's some kind of stories emerging today as well. We've actually seen 4 cases of personation here in Glasgow. Now, one of them was in Cathcart, there was 2 in the Glasgow south side, Nicola Sturgeon's old stomping ground, and 1 in Easterhouse as well. And you know, I spoke to the staff here about how do you even discern that these are cases of personation when one person is, you know, potentially done the vote for someone else. And it's all just down to the number of votes not tallying up. Of course, here in Scotland, no voter ID, you just need an address and to say your name, and then you get your ballot paper and off you go. Well, 4 cases here, these votes are counted towards the vote, but eventually the police will take those ballots away and obviously investigate whether any crime has been committed. Also, some kind of amusing revelations today about spoiled ballots. We are seeing, you know, a significant spike in spoiled ballots here as well. However, I've been told that, you know, if you draw a rude gesture or indeed write something rude beside the candidate's name, well, you know, that is very much seen as a vote for that candidate. So while a lot of people think that they might be protesting their vote here in Glasgow, they might end up giving that vote to that person. Now, obviously here and across Scotland, the picture is vast. We've not really seen a campaign like this. Reform have upset the apple cart. Parties were left to scramble, thinking that, of course, there was no place for reform in Scotland. But as the poll after poll showed, Reform really jostling for Labour for that second place position here at Holyrood, questions started to be raised, and those parties, the traditional parties of the Scottish Parliament, have had to really alter and bring a reasoned approach to reform at this election. Certainly here in Glasgow is one of those hot spots where Reform could win big, particularly in the regional vote and in the west of Scotland in general, and of course up in the northeast of Scotland, well, with between the fishing and the energy, that is of course another big hot spot for them as well. So still early in the day, about an hour and a half through into the count, but we're expecting the first declarations perhaps around between 1 and 2 p.m, although some chat that votes that usually took a long time to get to declaration because of geographical barriers like the Highlands and the Islands, well, they might be a little bit quicker because those votes transported overnight.
Thanks very much, Tony. We're going to go now to Doogie Beattie, our reporter, who is in the granite city of Aberdeen.
Yes, and it is a fascinating election. Of course, coming from Northern Ireland, we are used to PR elections, and political parties live on the data that is collected in a PR election, because the next time they go to canvass, they know exactly where they can put people and where they can make the most of that vote. Now, Aberdeen is the energy capital of Europe. It actually saved Margaret Thatcher at one point, the wealth that came out of Aberdeen, and there has been a real turning against the Labour government here because of their policies on net zero. Of course, that's affecting here. It actually has the biggest private civilian helicopter airport in the world. And if you walk out this door, you can see every 3 to 4 minutes there are helicopters leaving with those oil rig workers flying across onto those oil platforms. Now, this morning when those boxes were opened here, there was a big surprise, especially in Banffshire and Buchan. The Reform are polling extremely well there. In fact, they are basically past the SNP from those initial tally men and those conversations that we're having with them, and indeed in the next constituency over. So Reform in its first real run out in Scotland could see constituency, and that's first past the post, MSPs elected, because then it goes into the PR election, which is basically a separate election where you vote for the party and they are taken from the list, and that will definitely, if they hold these numbers up, bring them some regional MSPs in. But of course it's all in those areas that's to do with farming, fishing and fuel, three of the biggest areas here. Immigration is being talked about, but not really as intensely as it is in England. But ironically, all of those things the Scottish Parliament don't have any control over. They are all devolved matters, especially the fishing with those European deals that are being done at the moment. So quite interesting at the moment. Also, Steve Flynn, the leader of the SNP in Westminster, is standing here. Why is he standing? Will he give up his Westminster seat? And is he looking to challenge for the leadership of the SNP?
Thanks, Doogie. That's Doogie Beattie in Aberdeen.
Well, joining us now is a columnist from The Scotsman and former MEP Brian Monteith. Brian, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Could be a seismic day in Scottish politics. What are your predictions?
Well, having heard Doogie there, it sounds like it's certain to be a seismic day. It was not that long ago that Reform was written off continually by the opposition to them, by especially the SNP. But the idea that they will be now winning constituency seats is truly seismic. I think there's a real chance that the SNP will not get their majority, but will still remain the largest party. Hopefully, from my perspective, there will be enough parties that support the UK that will keep them out of government alongside any coalition or arrangement with the Greens.
Why do you think, Brian, it's changed for Reform north of the border? What's changed for them?
Well, I think it's partly that there's more resonance with the views of Nigel Farage. I think more people are saying, actually, he talks the sort of talk that we accept and believe in. He's standing up for us. Before, I think he was dismissed as just some, Southern English gent, and the issues he talked about were for people in the south of England. But of course, we know, and I know because I stood in the north of England for the European Parliament, that the votes, the ideas and votes that Nigel attracts are across the country. And Scots, I think, have shed this anti-Nigel view, and that's been helped by having Malcolm Offord as leader. And they've warmed to the fact that they're scunnered, as people say, about what all the other parties are saying. They don't deliver. And that the best thing to do is to actually give a new party a chance, a new party that actually articulates their own views.
Mm.
And can you ever see a day, Brian, when Reform UK run the Scottish Holyrood Parliament? Is that inconceivable?
No, it's not inconceivable, because that actually is the agenda of Malcolm Offord and his colleagues. The 2021 election was really just about getting candidates to stand, and they polled 0.2% at that election. That was to then build a platform to move on, and they've done that in subsequent elections, including the general election. Now they're going to have seats in the Holyrood. They're probably going to be the main opposition. They will make a name for themselves, and I think at 2031 that will be their opportunity, on the back of a possible general election victory for Reform, to come in and take, at least be the largest party in Holyrood and possibly form an administration.
Brian, a year ago, the SNP were not doing so well. It was looking like there could possibly be a Labour resurgence. What's happened? Why have the SNP, who were so, of course, unpopular by the end of Nicola Sturgeon's term, how have they overtaken Labour again?
Well, the SNP were deservedly unpopular, but there's one thing that's really changed the scene, and that is Starmer. There's absolutely no doubt that Labour would have been doing much better had Starmer not been Prime Minister, had Labour not won the election in a sense, because if Anna Sauer, the Labour leader, was standing against, say, a Conservative government still in power, or a different Prime Minister, then they possibly would be doing better. But the association of Anna Sauer with Starmer, much as he's tried to distance himself, is such that Labour has serious problems, and they've fallen away. And people have thought, well, you know, if they're not going to vote reform, that they're going to stick with the SNP, and that's Starmer. You know, you need to send the SAS to get him out of number 10. He's going to hang on as long as possible, and he's going to do more damage to the Labour Party so long as he stays.
Brian, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm so sorry. Brian Monteith from Scotland.
There's an idea, the SAS to get him out. Now, it's 11 o'clock on Friday, the 8th of May, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, Britain has rolled the dice and it's landed on Reform UK as a turquoise tidal wave sweeps the nation, while Labour suffer a brutal battering in the elections so far.
Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas, and what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands.
Starmageddon strikes the Labour Party, but the Prime Minister insists he isn't going anywhere.
Voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. May was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
We know this is hard, there's no point in pretending otherwise, but Kemi set out an agenda which is popular on the doorstep, and we will continue to get that message across to voters, and we know that that will be rewarded at the ballot box in years to come.
Well, it's been a mixed night for the Tories, losing 171 seats so far, but they have taken Westminster City Council from Labour.
He's doing a fantastic job. He's led our party to become the largest it has ever been in the party's history. I love working side by side with Ed. We make a strong leadership team, but he is the right person to lead us into the next election.
That was Daisy Cooper, the Lib Dem deputy leader. They've gained 35 seats so far, and they're celebrating the fact they're heading for their 8th set of local election gains in a row.
Meanwhile, Zach Polanski's Green Party is still holding out hopes of winning seats across the capital city, with many more results still to come. This is far from over.
Meanwhile, counting's begun in Wales and Scotland, where GBNews has you covered, of course.
That's right, we're looking not just at the 5,000 seats that are being elected across England. 1,200 or so of them have already declared. They're rolling in, of course, as we speak. But also, in the coming minutes and indeed hours, we're going to be looking at Scotland and Wales as well, as those seats come in and we paint our map a rainbow of colours.
Has Labour lost its grip on the North East? We're here in Sunderland, where Reform UK is projected to make significant gains.
Hello and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, it's been a lot of speculation about the Prime Minister. Do you know, I was working it out, Miriam. He isn't going to cling on. He is only the 4th Labour leader to be Prime Minister. That's quite an achievement.
Gosh.
So he's not going to go any time quick. You think Attlee, Wilson, Blair, Starmer.
Wasn't there a minority
I'm
government?
talking about to win general
election.
election. To win general election.
Yes,
to win a general election.
Gosh.
So that's why he's not. He's in his own way. He sees himself as an historic figure.
Yes.
Up there with Blair. Up there with Wilson. Wilson won 4 elections. Blair won 3. Attlee was the great post-war reforming Prime Minister.
And there's this modern myth, isn't there, that he made Labour electable again.
Yes.
But their vote share was the same as under Corbyn in 2024, in 2019, and less than Corbyn got in 2017. So in terms of the popular vote, Starmer didn't turn it around. He got lucky
because the Tories were so
unpopular.
hated and unpopular.
So it's really interesting how these political myths emerge, isn't it?
It really is. And the Daily Mail called it the loveless landslide. The loveless landslide.
Well, that love has definitely disappeared if it was ever there.
Gone completely. But we're going to talk to GBNews Deputy Political Head Tom Harwood, who is in the reads. He knows the detail, exactly what's happening right now. Tom.
Oh, Andrew, you put a lot of pressure on
my shoulders, but we do have the help of some graphical summaries. And what is an election morning without a massive map, or indeed a series of massive maps, as we've got behind us? Let's look at England first. Around 1,200 seats have so far declared, but there are over 1,000 seats still, that voted, of course, across yesterday. So let's look at some of these results in turn. Let's start up in the North East. You might be able to see a black splodge up here in the North East. Well, that black splodge is Hartlepool. Why have we coloured it in black when we know that the Reform Party won every single seat that was up for election in this council? Black in our map means no overall control. Well, only a third of the seats in Hartlepool were up for election. As with many of the councils and the black splodges that we see across the map of England here, only a certain section of the seats were up, and therefore, even if Reform got almost all of those seats, we're not turning these colours turquoise until they get a majority on the council. Now, where do they have a majority? Newcastle-under-Lyme was the first to declare. 27 seats from a standing start won the Reform Party, but there were other big successes. For instance, North East Lincolnshire, all but one seat went to the Reform Party, but again, only part of the council was elected. Down here in Harlow, very interesting, in Essex. Essex was meant to be a sweep for Reform, but astonishingly, the Conservatives held on remarkably in Harlow, even picking up some seats, which is astonishing. But we go out further into Essex and we see all of these no overall control, serious gains from the Reform Party there. One place where the Reform Party has surprisingly, perhaps, not picked up anywhere near a decent number of seats is down here in Fareham. Now, this is an interesting part of the country because this is the former Home Secretary, now Reform MP Suella Braverman's constituency. All but only one of the seats turned Reform. The rest stayed Conservative. So is Suella Braverman at risk at the next election? Well, perhaps. Let's go into London now and have a look at some of the successes that Reform has had. Picking up a London Borough Council of Havering, a big success that Nigel Farage was there to champion this morning. That's where he gave his big speech from. But just next door in Bexley, the Conservatives held on and the Reform Party didn't make that much of an inroad into. Very, very interesting. The further you get into London, the better the Conservatives have been doing as well. Gaining Westminster Council. They only needed a couple more seats to win that council. They gained 7. And Wandsworth as well. Big gains for the Conservative, taking them to the Plurality Party, the largest party on the council. They need 1 more seat to get a majority. Happily, there is one independent on that council who used to be a Conservative, so it looks like the Conservatives will control Wandsworth as well. If we go a little bit west to Richmond-upon-Thames, we're now into Lib Dem heartlands. And interestingly, the Lib Dems actually gained seats here from the Greens. The Greens had 5 seats previously on Richmond-upon-Thames Borough Council, and they lost all 5 of them last night. Now, why is that? Well, partly it's due to the deal that they had with the Lib Dems not to stand against each other last time, but part of it surely is too the change in the Green Party from perhaps a cuddly middle-class party to being more of a crusading left-wing party. Perhaps that cut through to the leafy, wealthy residents of Richmond-upon-Thames. But it's not just England voting today, of course. Scotland is also going to be voting, and Scotland has a slightly different electoral system, to put it mildly. 129 seats are up for grab in the Scottish Parliament. Now, the majority of those are these constituency seats. Everyone's used to these constituency elections, similar to Westminster, first past the post, that gets you in. But then we have these regions as well. And in these regions, parties get top-up votes. So every person in Scotland gets 2 ballot papers. One's lilac, one's peach. It's the peach paper that votes for the party and the lilac that votes for the constituency. Anyway, a complicated mathematical formula called the d'Hondt formula, which I'm sure we'll get into later, then divides, make sure you get a sort of proportional outcome. First the constituency seats and then top-ups to make it proportional from those regions. So we'll first see those declarations from the constituencies in the coming hours, and then we'll likely see the regionals later. It's likely that the SNP will dominate when it comes to the constituencies, as they usually do, and other parties mop up when it comes to the regional vote. But also in Wales. Wales used to have the same system as Scotland. Now, for the first time, they've got a completely different system. No longer do they have this mixed member proportional, where they have 1 constituency vote and 1 regional vote. Now it's all simply regional. 6 members per region. The Senedd, as it's known, has gone from 60 seats to 96 seats. So a lot more politicians being elected in Wales than ever before at a Senedd or an Assembly election before then. And what will we see? Well, there's a threshold of about 12% in each of these regions to get one of those members, one of those 6 members that can be elected. Some trouble, I'm hearing, perhaps, for the First Minister of Wales, Eluned Morgan, who might well lose her seat. One to watch, but my goodness me, lots to come in Wales, lots to come in Scotland, and still thousands of seats left to declare in England too.
Thank you, Tom Harwood. Fascinating explanation there. And it is incredible that we have all these different political electoral systems now within one United Kingdom.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to go now to the North East. We're going to go to Bethany Elsie, who is in Sunderland, where Reform are confident of making big gains.
You're absolutely right. They are confident. We're here in Sunderland. Counting got underway just after 10 o'clock this morning. We're expecting the first results from Sunderland City Council at around 1 p.m. onwards. It is an all-out election here, which means all of the 75 seats that are in the council are up for grabs. So it's not going to be slight changes. It could potentially be extremely large changes. Sunderland City Council has historically always been Labour for generations, but it's not just the case here in Sunderland. It's the case for every council in the North East. Labour has led Newcastle, Gateshead, South Tyneside as well, all of which are also holding all-out elections. So we could see a huge shift in the political spectrum here from what was a Labour red wall to Reform UK knocking that down entirely, with some polls suggesting that Reform UK could take 4 out of the 5 councils here. Now, other polls have suggested that if there was a general election tomorrow, people like the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, would potentially lose their seat. Now, Sunderland, yes, it has been a Labour heartland for generations, but that began to change in 2016 with Brexit, with the Sunderland becoming the first city to return a vote in favour of leaving the EU. So, you know, it's the landscape, the political landscape here in Sunderland is going to be shifting massively here today, and we'll be speaking to people throughout the afternoon.
Bethany, thank you very much for that report. It is really interesting, Andrew, looking at this so-called political realignment. I was reading this morning that of people who voted Brexit in 2016, 50% now of people who voted to leave the EU are voting Reform.
Yeah.
Whereas only 10% of Remain voters are voting Reform. Whereas areas where Remain won have got a tiny Reform vote of about 10%. Right. So despite the fact that it's 10 years since that referendum, we are still split as a country along those same lines.
Amazing, isn't it? 10 years on that one. Let's speak to somebody who was a big figure in the Brexit campaign, of course. That's the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Dame Priti Patel. Good morning to you, Dame Priti.
Morning, Andrew. Good morning, Miriam.
Now, you're obviously going to tell us that you've done pretty well because you've recaptured Westminster from Labour and you've virtually got Wandsworth Council back, but you have lost some pretty significant councils such as Hampshire, and you're down currently about 180 councillors, so not a great night.
I think think, you know, you've just been discussing this. There is this political realignment that's taking place. We are in a multi-party system. So I think first and foremost, we all have to recognise that. I went to 3 election counts overnight, Andrew, because my own constituency covers Colchester, Malden District and Braintree District. And in each of those areas, there were different outcomes because of the multi-party system. And I've had city elections in one of my areas too. But, you know, you mentioned Brexit. Look at Whittam Town. It used to be an old Labour town, voted to leave the EU and voted Conservative yesterday in the election. So, you know, you're seeing different results. There's good news, I have to say, particularly in London. You've touched on this. Westminster, you know, great Tory flagship councils that have had 4 years of pure Labour pain. Wandsworth as well. But look at Peterborough, look at Harlow, look at the gains that the Conservative Party has made there as well. So there are still more results to come, and it's not just in Scotland and Wales, but, you know, even in the county of Essex, they're still counting results today. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think we have possibly, you know, exceeded some expectations, because I'm afraid we went into these elections, you know, everyone writing us off. You know, we've all had visits from Reform buses and national campaigns and all the rest of it. And Reform have not pulled it out of the bag in the way in which they were claiming to do so. So I think we just need to wait for all the results to come in and then take stock. But first and foremost, our politics is changing, and I think everyone has to recognise that.
I mean, I can completely understand why the Conservatives are clutching at straws on those small numbers of gains, or at least failing to retreat. But if we look at the big picture, the Conservatives have lost 50% of the councillors or candidates that stood last night, and almost all of those gains have been made by Reform, similar to last year. Isn't it just that because the losses for Labour are even bigger this year, the losses to the Conservatives are less of a big news story, but it is still a dire, dire night for the Conservative Party?
So look, we have lost some incredible people that are from the community and have worked incredibly hard. Miriam, you understand this. You've been an ex-MP yourself. You know exactly the impact of that within political parties. My point is this, you know, even since last year, multi-party politics has grown. It's increased. The rise of the Green Party, other political parties, independents, you know, the Reform Party as well. So this has changed. The landscape has changed even more since last year. From a Conservative perspective, we absolutely know and recognise that we've got a way to go since 2024, that election defeat. But at the same time, it's not clutching at straws. We've had a lot of people across the country that have served their communities for years, and they have been outstanding public servants. But then I have to say, look at other results too. You know, I can see on your screen now, Bexley has come in. You know, that's a county, that's a council that Reform said that they were going to just take over. So, you know, I think we just need to look at these results in a very sober way. There'll be some pockets of results, we know that, in terms of some of the outcomes, how people have voted. There might be some local factors as well. But the reality is, multi-party politics is here to stay. Yes, Labour, Keir Starmer has led Labour to what looks like to be their worst ever election defeat. That's really quite shocking for Labour. They'll have to take a good look at themselves. But do not forget that from a Conservative perspective, at a national level, we are regrouping and rebuilding. We are doing well in places, as I've said, in Harlow, Broxbourne, Peterborough, the London areas, the London boroughs that you've mentioned, and there'll be other parts of the country as well.
I just don't see how you arrive at that interpretation from the results and the data in front of us, because in the 2024 general election, the Conservatives got 23% of the vote. That was the lowest vote share in living memory. You're now consistently on 20%. Some polls put you on 18%. You've gone backwards since that low point. I don't understand. Despite a few areas where the odd councillor is being won back or the odd councillor is being retaken, aside from those very few areas, it's a very, very bleak picture.
It takes time, Miriam. From rebuilding from a defeat takes time, and the Conservative Party has acknowledged that from day one, from 2024. And in terms of these local elections, these are being fought from a different high watermark from the past, where many of these seats were up for election in 2021, and during a time when the political backdrop was very different. So I think actually we do
most of these seats were up for election from 2022. So last year was a particularly bad year because, of course, 2021 was a very high point for the Conservative vote, the vaccine bounce, as it was called. But actually, most of these seats, we're talking either 2021, 2022 or 2023, which weren't particularly high points for the party. So I would say that this is a much more realistic indicator of where the party's at.
I think, first of all, we do have seats, counties in particular. There was a whole period where elections were cancelled. We've got to move on from all of that. The reality right now is that we are where we are. You know, we will always look at the lessons that have to be learnt and how we can rebuild. At the end of the day, you know, taking back big boroughs such as Westminster is very significant. That's not to be dismissed in any way. These are very significant London boroughs with large populations, large spending powers, big statutory services that need to be delivered, and it's the same up and down the country. You know, we can't automatically say that this translates to Westminster. We're seeing different factors come to play right now. That's the point that I'm making. And from a Conservative perspective, of course we are rebuilding. That's inevitable after what was a seismic election defeat in 2024. You don't rebuild overnight. That does take time. It takes time at the grassroots. It takes time nationally. And what I would say, Miriam, is that it's MPs like myself and many others that have been involved in my party for a long time that have put a hell of a shift in. Do not forget that it's the Conservative Party in Parliament that has scrutinised Labour, forced them into U-turns. The public can see that on issues such as winter fuel payments, what's going on in our high streets, all the type of policies when it comes to farming, the things that have an impact on people's day-to-day and costs of living. Of course, there's a long way to go. And they're also seeing a government that has failed to deliver on a range of promises, and people are feeling disillusioned. So, you know, we've all got more to do in this era of multi-party politics. The Conservative Party is the first party to recognise and acknowledge that we have a long way to go, and we are trying to rebuild and regroup at a national level and at a local level.
Can I just ask you finally, Jane Pretty, we had your former colleague Danny Kruger here this morning, and he said every 100 years there can be a seismic shift in politics, and he thinks we're at that point now. Is he right?
Our system has changed, or is changing, points to that. It absolutely points to that comment. There's no doubt about that. We will have to see what the public expectation is. You know, we live in an open society and a democracy. I have spent months knocking on doors, not just in my own patch, but around the country as well, and in London. And people are expressing different frustrations, different views. They want choice, they've got choice. Whether or not they choose to stick with that going forward remains to be seen. I think what will be interesting today, of course, both in Scotland and Wales, where, of course, you have a plethora of parties and different voting systems, what some of the outcomes are there, but also what that means for public service delivery. There is no doubt what we've seen in these elections, the national overlay coming over. You know, there's always this great irony. In local elections, national politics plays a very significant role. And then at general elections, people speak about local issues as well. That's part of the course. But I do think we are in a system that is changing, it is evolving, and we will have to all work much harder for every single vote to be relevant politically and to demonstrate that our parties are credible and serious, particularly in serious times. Look at the state of the world that we're living in. We have these big international conflicts that are taking place that are affecting our country in so many ways. And as we've seen with this current Labour government, they are inadequate at addressing many of these big challenges that are coming from international war, on things such as energy prices, our own domestic security, our international security, and they're even fragmenting some of our big international relationships.
All right, that's Dame Priti Patel. So nice to talk to you. Thanks for joining us, Dame Priti Patel. Are we going to Birmingham, or are we going to talk to our panel?
I think we're going to go to Birmingham, your favourite place, Andrew.
Yes, exactly.
Let's find out what's going on there.
Well, they've had a terrible bin strike for a year, and I would think Labour deserve to be punished for it. Let's talk to Jack Carson, who joins us live from the arena in Birmingham. Jack, what's happening there? They're counting votes furiously. Is there going to be a big change there?
Well, ultimately, at the moment, we don't know because polling is so mixed. Some polling has Labour still as the overall kind of biggest party on the council, but losing their majority and losing votes. Other polling, particularly the most recent poll leading up to the election, had Reform as the largest party on 47 seats, but just shy of the 52 needed to win a majority. This is a full council election, so all 101 councillors are to be elected or re-elected on this council today. So as you can see, counting already underway here. We've had the verification of votes and now the counting can finally begin. We are strapping ourselves in for what is going to be a really long day. We might not get some of the final results until 6 p.m. this evening. After 6 p.m, hopefully some of the first results start to come in and we can start to get a bit of a picture around lunchtime and midway through this afternoon. This is the largest local authority in Europe, serving 1.1 million residents, and this whole entire election has been campaigned on Palestine to potholes, bankruptcy, and as you rightly mentioned, Andrew and Miriam, bins as well. That all-out strike now, well over a year, starting in March last year. 10 days ago, we couldn't really talk about it during the election period, but Labour 10 days ago saying and doing a press conference to the media saying that they could solve the bin strikes if they were to be re-elected, that they'd done a deal with Unite. Unite the Union seemed to think that actually that was a deal that was the basis of a deal that any party who might take control of this council could come in and use. We know and had confirmation from them that before this election, the Unite the Union had been speaking to every single possible party of today and looking like tomorrow morning when we get all of the final results in, working with them to try and end this, because that of course is one of the biggest issues of this election. Will the bin strike be able to be ended? And of course those votes now being counted, hopefully not too far away from getting some idea of where this council election's going.
Well, thank you very much, Jack Carson. We will await that result with bated breath.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one, isn't it?
It'd be extraordinary if the bin strike has had no impact on the vote.
I can't believe it won't
such
have
a massive issue.
I mean, a dereliction of duty, wasn't it, by the council? Shocking.
Lasting such a long time. Well, we're rejoined now by our panel, Reform MP Lee Anderson and former Labour official Halima Khan here in the studio. Halima, let's come to you first. Just heard from Priti Patel, obviously veteran Conservative MP, currently the Shadow Foreign Secretary, putting a very positive spin on these results for the Conservatives, saying that there seem to be green shoots of hope. But is that what you see in the results?
I think she's playing delusional, really, to be honest. I think that it's quite desperate to show that actually we're doing great. But I mean, I didn't see any Tories out campaigning throughout the whole local election period because they are that embarrassed to show face at the doorstep because they have nothing to offer. So I think that, yeah, Priti Patel was just...
Lee, it's what the kids call...
And you've got the most unpopular Prime Minister ever and the most disastrous government ever. You should be winning hundreds, if not a few thousand seats, not losing seats. And I think Arima's quite right. I've got a lot of respect for Priti, but she's been pretty delusional. She's putting on a brave face. They should be scooping up seats over the next 24 hours, not losing seats.
2 years, we're halfway through the Parliament, Lee, and they're going backwards. So currently, they're down 171 seats, and that will rise.
That is not green shoots of recovery. That is a disaster, Andrew. Complete disaster.
Do you think there's this mismatch, though, between what's going on in Parliament, where I think even the most hardened observer would agree that Combay not improved, Conservatives are doing quite well at holding Labour to account in terms of parliamentary process, but yet that's having no impact on the ground. And I think perhaps the Conservative Party hierarchy is struggling to understand.
Let's not forget, guys.
Gap.
Let's not forget that you know. Without Reform UK, these council elections wouldn't have gone ahead, a lot of them.
No.
Yes, that's a very good point.
And, the Labour Party sort of supported that. And the Tories, even though they said they wanted these elections, they didn't want these elections to go ahead. They could have whipped their local councillors to go ahead, but they didn't. And they knew what was going to happen. We're seeing it now, playing out live on GBNews, what's happening. And, yeah, like I said, Andrew, there's no green shoots of recovery. They should be winning seats, not losing seats.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it, Nima?
Yep, absolutely. I would agree there as well. I mean, it's not difficult to be an opposition into this Labour government, really, to be honest.
And I think the Lib Dems feel like they're being squeezed a bit too.
Yeah, they are being squeezed. We're in an era now, Andrew, where we've got 5 parties all going for seats, all going for votes. It's interesting times. The public now, to be fair to the public, they've got a real choice and they've got some real decisions to make. And Nigel always said that these set of elections were like our midterms. This is going to give us an idea of what will happen at the next general election. And the reform waivers, because there's a few still out there that's in maybe a Tory-ish seat, might think, is it worth voting reform? This set of results will say to people who's wavering like that, it's OK to go and vote for Reform UK, because we're going to win.
Halima, Lee's been talking about all the different parties, but there are also a lot of independents standing in this election. And we've seen a big rise of Muslim independent candidates. When I was looking this morning, at over 200 already had been elected. What impact do you think that's going to have in areas like Birmingham and also for the Labour Party more broadly?
So, I mean, I think the term Muslim independence is quite... I don't know, demoralising for me as a Muslim to hear as well, because I think that Muslims are across the political spectrum. When I was in Birmingham, actually, in this local election campaigning for a Birmingham independent called Dani Mazhar in the Heartlands ward, there was a real change in what I usually would have expected at the door. There were a lot of people that were saying, we still don't know who we're going to vote for. There were a lot of people saying anyone but Labour Tory, so they were willing to vote for independent. But there were also people saying, you know, South Asian Muslims saying that we're going to vote reform because we're just fed up.
And
right?
why has Labour lost that Muslim vote? There were some studies showing that they could rely on 75% of the Muslim vote. We saw it falling away last time, and it's getting worse. Is it because of Gaza, or is it, as Lee Anderson might say, like with Labour in Wales, they just took the vote for granted?
100% took the vote for granted,
right.
Definitely. And also, of course, Gaza is something that's going to impact their voter base because, again, Tony Blair was very popular up until the Iraq war, and then the majority of the Muslim vote then went to Lib Dems.
Right.
And so we're going to see that, where it's like Labour may seem like it's on the left, but votes might shift towards the right as well, again, as it did from Labour to Lib Dems. And I think that's what's explaining, you know, a lot of people just, again, ending up either voting reform or an independent.
So you think there could be a Muslim reform vote?
I think there is a Muslim reform vote. Of course, there are also Muslim candidates that did stand for reform, Layla Cunningham being one of them.
I was just about to say Layla Cunningham is the obvious one. She's your London mayoral candidate.
Yeah, and Zia as well. So he's going to be standing at the next election.
But that didn't happen in Gorton and Denton, though, Lee. I mean, the vote was split on pretty sectarian lines.
It was, but I don't think we can take that by-election as a barometer of what's going to happen in the future. I think that was a complete one-off. But Harima makes a good point about the Muslim vote, and Andrew chipped in with the voters in South Wales. It makes you wonder now which voters the Labour Party can attract. So they've lost the Muslim vote, a lot of the Muslim vote. They've lost the working class vote. Who's going to vote for them now? And I think you said it earlier on this morning, Andrew. The only people that are voting for the Labour Party now, I think, and I see it on social media a lot, is the people that don't like Reform UK or the Tories. As simple as that.
Labour's become almost a protest vote.
Yeah, they're a protest party.
Extraordinary. I was talking to some people who are involved in the Independent Muslim Party organisation, and they say they think there could be as many as 30 independent Muslim MPs in the next Parliament. And that would all be at Labour's expense.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that one thing that I have to talk about in terms of, like, the South Asian vote, I mean, most of the people that we've seen campaigning outside for any party have been, even with, I saw Layla Cunningham's campaign canvassing, and there was a lot of South Asians. A lot of the people that do go door knocking for every party is the South Asian community. And I think that does go back to colonialism and, you know, democracy being something that was that are the ones that are very much politically engaged and actively participating in things that other white working class communities probably won't do.
Stay with us, panel, because we're going to cross to Dover, where Mark White, our Home Security Editor, has got some breaking news, and I think we've got a good idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly what it is.
So I can't hear you. Can you take the key off the gallery, please? Can you ask your question again?
Yeah, Mark White, breaking news. We think you're going to tell us there's a major milestone being announced today with the number of migrants illegally crossing the Channel.
Yeah, we can now confirm that as the Prime Minister, of course, contends with the fallout from a disastrous election night, he will now have to deal with a further major blow, the confirmation that 200,000 small boat migrants who've crossed illegally since the crisis began in 2018. That figure was reached just a short time ago. The Border Force vessel Ranger arrived here at Dover Harbour. We counted as they came off 70. Some have, as they come off the gangways, it varies between 70 and 72. But I think our figure is around about 70. That will take the total number, to be precise, to 200,013 since this crisis began in 2018. We saw, of course, initially that first year less than 300 crossed dinghies that were stolen from harbours in that local area around France, or bought locally as well. But it's become much more professionalised over the years. We've seen it grow into the tens of thousands. The biggest year, of course, that there has been so far was 2022, where 45,000 plus crossed the English Channel. It went down the following year, but last year, under the full year of Sir Keir Starmer, it was up again to over 41,000. This year, it's a bit down, about 35% down on where it was on the same period last year. Now, the government, I'm sure, will take some comfort from that. They will try to suggest that the money that are giving the French, for instance, £662 million is having an effect in trying to sort of clamp down on the supply of these boats and dealing with the migrants and smashing the gangs. But the fact is that we've had a month or so of bad weather conditions, and all we need is a run of good days as we go into the summer, and that gap is closed. So very, very significant milestone, grim reading, of course, for the Prime Minister, as we have now crossed 200,000 illegal migrants who come by dinghies across the English Channel since this crisis began.
All right, Mark, that's Mark White in Dover. Lee Anson, perfect person to comment. What a gift for the Reform Party.
Well, it's unbelievable. I was in the camps in Calais 4 or 5 years ago when I was on the Home Affairs Select Committee, when the Tory party was in government. And speaking to the migrants, mostly from Sudan, Eritrea, it was quite honest at the time, saying that we're coming to the UK for economic reasons. They saw it as El Dorado. That was the expression they used, El Dorado. We had the NGOs, Care for Calais, there assisting these people to come over. They're part of the trade. And then fast forward 4 years, 200,000 have come over. We've seen, and Miriam might remember this at Tory conference 4 years ago when Boris was PM, saying he was going to stop the boats. Not done it. Starmer said he would smash the gangs. What has he done? He's given France a load of money. He's stopped China selling engines to put on these dinghies. The numbers are going through the roof. And we know exactly what to do, Andrew. Leave the ECHR, have our own Bill of Rights, put the Navy in the Channel and detain and deport. It's really that simple. Wherever there's the pull factor to come over here, you get picked up in the Channel straight away. Yeah. You get ferried to a hotel. You get looked after. You get put in, accommodation once you come out of the hotel. You get put into HMOs in communities like mine. You get legal aid for your asylum claim. You're being coached all the way through, and you've got about a 5% chance of ever being deported. And I tell you, it's unfair on not just a British taxpayer. It's unfair on some of my friends that weren't born in this country, that came here legally, that had to jump through hoops and pay thousands of pounds to get here to set up for their family and to have a better life and contribute towards our country. It's not fair on them people either.
Yeah, it's a big problem for Labour politically, this, isn't it? Because Starmer he mocked the Tories, quite rightly, because Rishi was going to stop the boats. He was going to smash the gangs. He hasn't done anything.
Yeah, I mean, early on in his leadership, they were quite proud to say that they apparently deported more people than the Conservative Party. I think that a lot of these things, it's pandering to views and people who want to, again, they don't have policies for anything. So I think that when they do pitch, we're still better than them, I don't think they're doing anything seriously to address any issue either way, right? They're not taking a position either way. They're not fully on the left-wing side of things and saying, yeah, look, we should welcome, refugees are welcome. they're not on the right side either, where they're saying, no, we should deport them all. So where do they stand? And I think right now they're far more concerned about banning people from entering the country for freedom of speech. For example, I mean, Kanye West, big one. I think they're more vested in interest in, you know, who comes here to speak or perform than, you know, actually having proper asylum-seeking processes and proper processes for legal migration as well.
Lee, it's very significant, isn't it, to get this number? Because, of course, it's the issue of immigration that really kicked off this whole political realignment during the Blair years. Of course, we were talking about legal immigration, but nevertheless, this sense that the country was changing rapidly, people were coming here from different countries. No one ever voted for that. In fact, every single election, people vote for parties with restrictionist policies, and yet here we are.
I remember a time, Miriam, in the 90s when it was about 30 or 40,000 net immigration into this country, and we could cope with that. People were leaving, people coming from different countries, bringing different skills, working. And now I think in the last couple of years we've had, apart from the last year, I suppose, we've had net migration at 1 million. We've had about 500,000 people leaving our country as well to work abroad. And let me tell you, this is not a fair exchange. We've got highly skilled people leaving to work in other countries because of the tax situation. We've got retired people with a bit of wealth. We've got businessmen. I've got a friend of mine who wants to leave this country. Earns an absolute fortune. And who are we replacing these people with? People who can come and wash our cars or hang around the streets or do Deliveroo jobs. I'm sorry, I've said it time and time again, I do not want these people in our country.
I'm just looking at 200,000, that is a city the size of Reading. That's how many people...
And the thing is, Andrew, mostly men, about 95%
under the age of 30.
Men under the age of 30, some of whom are going to commit some awful crimes.
It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. Now, we've got a poll of the day. I think we know the answer to this. Is the two-party system, the posh people call it the duopoly.
Oh, there you go.
Is the two-party system dead? Yes or no? You can scan the QR code, that's that thing in the corner of the screen apparently, or visit gbnews.com. Please vote.
Yes, looking forward to the results on that. Well, let's cross over now to the Head of Policy and Public Affairs Research at Opinion, James Crouch. James, always an exciting night for opinion pollsters. Have you had any sleep?
I've had about 3 hours, so not very much, no.
How would you interpret the results so far? Obviously, a lot yet to come in, but there does seem to be one story, which is huge gains for reform.
Yeah, I think the very basic story is one that we expected, and it's been borne out that reform is quite clearly well ahead in the number of votes being cast. It's what all the polls say. And then all the other parties essentially all bunched in together. So Conservative, Labour, Green, Lib Dems, all of them within a few points of each other in terms of votes. And it's all just seeing kind of where the chips land, basically, who comes out top where. But Reform are probably a national party after today.
Significant, because that was always the criticism of them before, James, that they weren't a national party, and we are expecting huge gains in Scotland and Wales.
Yes, so that's what's going to be the story of the weekend, I guess, when all those results fully come in. I think the other interesting thing is just where these new battlegrounds are going to be, especially in Wales. The map's going to look completely different to what it's looked before. And even here in England, we're all trying to figure out, well, if Reform are going to hold places from Chorley all the way through to Basildon, basically, where are the battlegrounds of the future? Where are the places that politicians will spend their time trying to maximise the efficiency of their votes? Where will that be?
Can we, this is a local election, turnout under 50%, but pretty high, I would say. I think in a lot of seats it's about 43%, James. Can we extrapolate from this a general election result?
Well, it might be a little bit different in a general election. One of the things we found is, at least at the moment, the Reform voter bloc is the most coherent. They're the ones who vote Reform at a national level. They'll vote it at a local level. They'll turn out come what may. So that seems to be the case at the moment. It really is up to the other parties to basically get their act together ahead of a general election to basically combat that. But at the moment, Reform's the only one who are able to mobilise their voters in quite that way, and that's why they're doing so well.
But there have been a lot of reports suggesting Reform had peaked because they had been in almost over 30%, 29%. The last poll I saw them on, they were in the lead on 21%. But the real test is at the ballot box, and they are romping ahead.
Yes, I do think there's something to be split out between the vote share and the seats and the councils that they'll win. So I think last year, Reform's vote is probably about the same in the local elections last year, but the problem is the other parties were completely in disarray and completely disorganised. So there just was no kind of local fight up against Reform. At least here, one of the things we've started to see a bit is the Conservative Party in some interesting places managing to fight Reform. Now, Reform still won. They've still taken most of the votes, and they're taking a lot of the council seats. But there are surprising places where the Conservative Party, you just imagine, would have been railroaded, and they've held on to some seats, or places like Harlow, they've actually kept the council. So this is the slight difference. That's the thing, saying that Reform has peaked. It's just the other parties, or at least Conservatives, have started a fight back.
James, can we just speak briefly about the Green votes? Obviously, we know that the Labour Party have been worried about the Greens' growing popularity. It seems that they are up, certainly, on vote share from last year, but they may struggle to break through under first past the post. Do you think that's anything to do with the fact that Zach Polanski himself has lost popularity in the last week after his comments on Twitter about that awful anti-Semitic attack?
Yes, I think it's definitely had an impact. We've seen it throughout all the polls that Zach Polanski's popularity has plummeted with a few days, basically in the immediate 2 days before the election. I think that sometimes we're automatically assume that all of these Green voters are ex-Labour voters. You saw in Peterborough, for example, some very strange results of basically of Green voters switching to Reform and vice versa. So there are a lot of interesting people now kind of ending up in the Green camp, as well as those places that we thought would always go in kind of East London, which we don't have in yet. So I think I'm reserving judgment a little bit about how well the Greens have done today and where they've done well.
James Crouch from Opinion, thank you so much for your analysis this morning.
He must so regret those last 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Zach Gosser, because he appeared to be walking on water.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Very well.
He was so popular, but I mean, his comments about the police response in Golders Green was shameful.
Yeah, and it sounds like in some of the places where Green has been strong, the Lib Dems have really benefited from people who just can't stomach those comments. But
well, you know, because people want law when you're on the side of law and order, and it just didn't appear he was. We're going to talk now to a former Police and Crime Commissioner who is now a newly elected councillor for Westminster, our old friend Festus. Festus, congratulations.
Yeah, great news.
Thank you very much.
So you are part of the truly one success stories the Tories can boast of. They've recaptured the flagship council of Westminster, and quite comfortably.
Yes, look, whatever anybody says, right, a dead party does not win elections in Westminster.
Right.
No chance. A dead party does not win elections in Wandsworth. And a dead party doesn't win elections in Harlow either, which the Conservative Party actually have done over the last day. And it's a great feeling, because this has been a lot of work. My feet are still sore, doing about 25,000 steps a day, even though I didn't always win the competition every day. But it's a great feeling, and to be quite frank with you, the residents of Westminster and the businesses in the city as well have been through a lot under the last 4 years of a Labour council, and they'll be able to breathe a sigh of relief now with a Conservative administration now running the council.
And I predict there's going to be friction pretty quickly between the leadership of Westminster Council and the Mayor of London.
Well, it's inevitable, because the madness that he is imposing on businesses and people in Westminster around, for example, the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street is just an insanity. The way that policing has been run in Westminster, the Parks Police that's been completely scrapped.
Got rid of them.
Completely, and the implications of that is not really going down too well in the area. The way that protests constantly are taking place in Westminster, which taxpayers in Westminster have to pay for to police, that's not going down too well. So I watch this space and hold your popcorn in hand as well.
I hate to burst your bubble, and of course, congratulations on your win, but Festus, just because the Conservative Party has won a couple of councils in some very extraordinary areas of London does not really mean they're making a recovery.
Well,
I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there.
We've got a declaration in Hackney which the Greens had high hopes of.
865 votes. If I could continue, please. Excuse me, if I could continue. Excuse me, please. Can I continue? Hello? Excuse me, can I continue? The total number of votes cast across Hackney was 76,187. The turnout was 40.98%, and the total number of ballot papers rejected was 513. I do hereby declare that Zoe Garbett is duly elected as the Mayor of Hackney. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we will now be calling the candidates and also the elected mayor to give their acceptance and also other speeches. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who made this election run so smoothly. Thanks to Bruce and his team and Dawn for all your leadership. Today we start the fight back. In this election, over and over, people kept telling me that they felt let down. People kept saying it's hard for me and it's hard for us. Council services are failing those who need them most, and people are struggling to make ends meet. To everyone who voted for me, I truly thank you for putting your trust in me today. I've always stood up against injustice. For over a decade in the NHS, being a councillor in Dalston to sitting on the London Assembly, all the work I've ever done has been to change the system and services that let people down, harm people and widen inequality. Our borough is home to over 250,000 people. So many people are being failed by the government and the systems, whether it's parents, migrants, trans people, disabled people and young people. The list goes on and on. Across London and the country, people have made it clear that they are desperate for an alternative to this failing Labour government. It's not old politics for parties versus new parties. This is about a system of fear versus a movement of hope. Hackney voters have said loud and clear that they are sick of politicians putting profit before our planet, and for supporting genocide and letting down so many people who are struggling. From our Latin American community events to walking down our streets to the estate that I live on, I've been in so many beautiful spaces throughout this campaign that show that Hackney rejects hate and division. Hackney has a history of solidarity between the beautiful mixes of people and communities making Hackney our home. Here, people's worries about immigration are worries about their neighbours being exploited and mistreated. But Hackney deserves better. I don't want to tweak around the edges. I'm going to change the system. That's why you've elected me to lead the fight back here in Hackney. This campaign has never just been about the Green Party. Countless people, movements, organisations, parties and communities have come together to make this change possible. Thank you to the whole team of candidates, volunteers, staff who have helped build this victory. Because this administration just isn't about Hackney Town Hall. It's about Ridley Road Market, Somerford Grove Estate, your local shop, your school and the school your kids go to. And just as Hackney should belong to Hackney residents, this administration is yours. Because the people of Hackney own Hackney, and it's time to take it back. That's why one of my first acts will be to do a full investigation into who owns Hackney, its buildings, its land, to begin getting these spaces back to the communities who desperately need them. Our plan is about getting the best basics right and making day-to-day easier, getting repairs done quickly, making food and energy cheaper, and rooting out racism in our schools. I'll fight the system that views housing as a way of making money rather than a universal right for every single person. I'll get more council affordable houses from development. The people need somewhere affordable to stay. And I won't be silent about the government decisions that are harming Hackney residents, like continued austerity. It is both heart-wrenching and outrageous that something like 1 in 2 children in Hackney choice.
And Chris Hope, we've got some important breaking news.
OK, that's Zoe Garbutt, who's the Green Mayor, directly Metalev of Hackney. But huge news in Essex. Reform UK have taken Essex. That is massive. That is Kemi Badenoch's home county. That is Priti Patel's home county. This is the win
James
they
Cleverly's,
wanted.
that's the 3
James
most senior Tories.
This is
that's their
absolutely
backyard.
seismic
Bernard Jenkin.
for the Conservative Party. How will they respond to this? We'll wait and see. But Reform UK have taken Essex. They've secured so far 40 of the 78 seats up for election. This is seismic.
Yeah.
This will be the marquee seat won by Reform, I expect, in these English local elections.
And they've also won next door Havering, which is Romford. They've won that today as well.
They are saying to me, we are landsliding in Essex. It's absolutely huge, and this will be a warning sign for anyone who believes that the Tories are coming back. They are making gains. They have won in Westminster. They nearly won in Wandsworth. They had problems elsewhere. They lost all their seats, for example, in Sutton. But Essex is the quintessential Essex man Tory council.
Absolutely.
And we've been talking about how Reform have been gaining in the red wall, former Labour areas, but this is the blue wall.
It really is, and of course it's a mixed picture, and we'll wait and see how Reform do elsewhere. But this is a big one for their party.
Thank you, Chris Hope. Much more to come from you on GB News today. But now we're going to cross to the Green Party candidate for Barking. We had to cut him off earlier, but Paul Colesland is back. Paul, you'll be very happy at the news from Hackney.
Absolutely fantastic, and it's a real sign that the Greens are chipping away at Labour's red wall in London. It's also a good sign as well, because obviously it's been a little bit slow to get started on the Green results, because a lot of these results have been coming in from more Labour reform areas. And as London councils and London mayoralty start to cool, we'll start seeing a lot more results now. There's the counts going on right behind me in Barking. They're being very religious about not allowing phones in there, so I'm having to speak to you from the corridor, I'm afraid. But this is a very interesting seat. In some ways, it's where Hackney meets Essex. So obviously, the inner London boroughs are going Green, Newham, Hackney, places like that. Essex is going Reform, and Barking and Dagenham, the line goes right down the borough. So in that hall behind me, we have contests where it's Labour versus Greens, and very, very closely contested, hopefully like the ward I'm standing in, and also lots of contests where it's Labour versus Reform, and again, way too close to call. The key thing is, though, is that not only is two-party politics dead, but the kinds of local authorities like Barking and Dagenham, where they weigh the Labour vote, stick a red rosette on whoever they like and get them elected, they're gone. Those days are gone. We're going to have opposition on this council, and it's probably going to come from both the left and the right, which puts Labour in a very difficult position, because how do they respond when they're being eaten away from both sides of the political spectrum?
Paul, are you worried about the direction of travel of the Green Party? It used to be very concerned, mostly concerned with environmental issues, and that was the one thing that people looked to when voting Green, certainly in more rural areas. It's now very much associated with more an urban kind of politics, perhaps even sometimes a sectarian kind of politics, more interested in what's happening in the Middle East than necessarily whether or not people's bins are being collected. Do you recognise that, and does it worry you?
No, I don't recognise it at all. On the doorstep, almost all of my conversations were about the local area, about how I'm going to improve that. And that really stems from the fact that I, as a candidate, and many other Green local candidates, are people who've been working in our communities on environmental issues for years. I run a volunteer local river charity. I go and get rubbish out of the river. I plant trees. And that is the message that I'm bringing to people. But I would also say that that is being reflected nationally as well. So Zach, the stuff that gets highlighted in the media sometimes is the kind of more culture wars issues. But he is a great environmental champion. Just a few months ago, I did a detailed tweet about sewage and the fact that both Labour and the Conservatives, and indeed I think Reform, are not doing what they need to do on stopping sewage going into our rivers. Zach then raised that with the Deputy Mayor of London at Mayor's Question Time, and now I'm going to be, after these elections, having a meeting with the Deputy Mayor to talk in detail about sewage in London rivers and how we stop that. To me, that is very, very typical environmentalist Green fare, and the Greens are still doing that. But I think the key thing is they're doing all of that environmental and typical deep Green work, but they're also being popular. And actually, is there much point in just sort of shouting from the sidelines about environmentalism, or is it better to also take power and ensure that those environmental policies, the typical stuff around trees and rivers, can actually be implemented? I actually think the latter, and I speak that as a more perhaps typically environmentalist Green member and candidate.
All right, Paul. Well, best of luck with your count. That's Paul Powersland, who is the candidate to be mayor in Barking. Hackney have just won the directly elect mayor competition in Hackney. The Greens have won it there. That is Diane Abbott territory.
Yeah.
Incredible. That is a seismic result.
The council that count later, that's in the mayoralty.
Yeah, and of course, huge result, which Chris Hope just brought us. The Tories have lost their heartland of Essex. That is, the blue wall has just disintegrated.
Well, Margaret Thatcher rolling in her grave at that.
She really
absolutely
was.
She'll be
Essex man.
Essex man has gone to reform.
Yeah, and that's the home of Priti Patel, Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly. The top 3 Tories have all got Essex constituencies, and on that basis, they could all be out.
And the London man may about to be go Green.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it from Britain's Newsroom.
Yeah,
It's been a fascinating show.
It's been fascinating. We'll be back with you next week, but we're going to go down to GBNews Deputy British Editor Tom Harwood for the very latest with his graphs, and he does like his graphs.
Well, Miriam, you were saying that the map of London may be going green. Let's have a look at that map now, because in London we're not yet seeing a single green borough council, and yet we have had this first directly elected mayor in Hackney. Now, Hackney over there could be going green on the basis of these votes, but we're going to keep a close eye on it. Of course, the Conservatives have managed to flip Westminster blue, and the Reform Party have managed to take a London borough as well. Clearly, there is lots going on, lots of churn within London, and we'll be following that very closely indeed. But at the wider country, what is the picture? Many councils going to no overall control. We're going to be seeing that, but of course, that big Essex win for reform, lots more still to come. We'll follow it all.
And I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos.
Hey, love it with no votes. This pace
and he's Tom Harwood. Right now, the Prime Minister has vowed not to quit as he takes responsibility for Labour's abysmal local council.